for those who are wondering. I'm just waiting for the go-ahead, for the green light, so to speak, there, so we can. If there was an on-air button, there'd be a little light that says on air, right?
Recording in progress.
Thank you. Please rise. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to ask the city clerk to do roll call, please.
Yes, good evening, Mayor. Councilmember Andrews.
Present.
Councilmember Marquez.
Present.
Councilmember Councilmember Cermeño.
I'm here.
Councilmember Syrup.
Present.
Councilmember Roche.
Here.
Mayor Salinas.
Present.
I
Thank you.
believe that covered all of them. Apologies for the technology this evening.
Okay. Thank you. I'd like to next move on to public comments. Public comments is reserved for anybody who would like to talk and address the council regarding something that is not on the agenda. So if you'd like to, address us on a concern that is not on the agenda, feel free. And I think we have 3 public comments right now. Number 1 is Dr. Bob Carlson. If you could just hit the button. There you go.
Good evening, council members, mayor. I'm here to endorse a piece of your business tonight, so I don't know if I'm out of order or not, since it's probably on your agenda to select a new council member. And I want to add my endorsement to Dan Goldstein. I had the pleasure of running for the school board with him, and at that time got to know him very well and began to appreciate his intelligence and his integrity. And I continue to do so. I think 2 points I'd like to make in his behalf. One is he has invested himself in this community over the last 10 to 12 years. He served on the planning commission, a number of council or media groups appointed by the council. He's been in the community working, not coming at the community and pretending to be working. He's been very involved. The second thing I'd like to point out, and this may be a bit of an edge to it, but I'm going to point it out in any case, and that is he's put himself before the electorate for this position. He's not here tonight trying to win 3 votes. He went out and tried to win the 10,000 it took to be on the council. And by doing so, he gained enough votes to finish in 3rd place, but over 700 votes ahead of his competition. Actually, I think it might have been just a little less. So I think it's important to bear in mind that the electorate has spoken on his behalf in terms of this position, and that deserves your consideration tonight as you speak about him and deliberate about his ability to serve on the council. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next comment is Mr. Frank Farrell.
Hello. Good, we're on. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Honorable Council. I'd like to read a statement from the Hayward Chamber of Commerce and its Government Relations Council. In concurrence with our good government now, we strongly encourage the selection of Dan Goldstein for the open council seat vacated by Mark Salinas.
Yeah, no, hold on, I'm trying to, let me mute the...
Should I say it again? No, I'm good. Dan had been vetted by over 7,247 voters and residents of Hayward. He was vetted, and he had an opportunity to show his platform, and it gave the voters an opportunity to know who Dan is. Dan knows his voters, and that's why we endorse him. Along with the good doctor said, that's why the chamber continues to endorse Dan Goldstein. Thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate it. And if, given the sort of size of the crowd this evening, I will allow public comment if you came here to speak on behalf of a candidate or on the agenda item. Feel free to do that. I'll do that. I'll allow that. Our next speaker is Joy Mitchell.
Good evening. I'm not an orator, but I am in support of Artavia Berry. I'm a resident here, and I'm also her fiance. I've been knowing her since high school. She's been a leader of the community for as long as I've known her, and she started with ministry work, and she's moved on to nonprofit work. Mostly in education, but now also in homelessness. And I am a big fan and supporter of her reparations work as well. And I think she would be an amazing leader on the council. Thank you.
Since I rearranged the public comment a little bit, I'll see if anyone has a public comment. And if you do, you can come up now. And if you do, please fill out a form or come over here to the city clerk and fill out a form.
Good evening, Mayor Salinas and council members. My name is Lawrence Ratto, and I'm a retired Hayward City Councilman. You're in an interesting position. Only twice during my term did we have to make an appointment, and we did things a little differently, thanks to probably me. I don't mean to brag, but we there were council members had their special persons that they wanted to appoint, and what I tried to do is I tried to find someone in the community that they really admired and trusted. Trusting was pretty important. Who would not run again for re-election, because quite frankly, as some of you already know, because you've had that experience, once you get appointed, it's very difficult to unseat you, in our city especially. And since I've been around for quite a while, I can only think of maybe two times maybe where a council council seat was vacated, and the person that got the assignment ran for re-election and got elected. That's not going to happen tonight, and I understand that. And I also understand that having an election and letting the people decide this is not going to happen either, because A, it's too expensive, and basically we need the funds to do other things in the city, and B, the political climate in our country would not allow you guys to do that. So basically, I'm here to recommend one person, not because of where he finished on the ballot, because that's immaterial to me, but because of the people that have applied. And I would like to publicly acknowledge that the people that applied are all good people, and I'm sure they would serve honorably. But I think that this one person would probably represent the broad section of our community better than anybody else on your list. That person is Mr. Goldstein. And I've known him for a while. He's a little bit more conservative than I am, I think, but I have a great deal of respect for him because a couple of things. He is intelligent, but he also is honest, and I think that's really important. I've had an opportunity to interact with almost all of you, but not quite all of you, and all of you, to coin a phrase, put your money where your mouth is. And I think Dan is that kind of a person. And I think that he will work for consensus on the council. I think he would be a good addition. And I hope that you will appoint him. I also would like to congratulate the two new elected council persons. I'm sure they will do an outstanding job. And also to our newly elected mayor. And also I'd like to say hello to my ex-student who's sitting up there with you. Anyway, thank you all for your time. I appreciate it. Have a good evening and good luck to you. One last point. For whoever you appoint tonight and for the two new council members, whatever you do not let the city manager get away. Because quite frankly, as much as you guys set policy, the person that runs the city is the city manager, not you. And if you don't understand that, you probably need to learn that. Have a good evening.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker is Rambo Ramos.
Good morning. I was one of the 56 candidates that had applied for this position that you have open tonight. And I think it's highly unfair, not only for myself, but to everybody else that had applied to not get invited for an interview. Selecting 5 people when you have 56 candidates, I don't think is fair at all. I joined the military at 17 years old. I was a junior in high school. My mother had a sign for me after 9/11. I served honorably, life-saving awards in the military. I then went on, I did deployments to Ramadi, Iraq. I served in Japan, Guam, Iwo Jima, Thailand, the Leyte, Philippines for a mudslide disaster that killed 1,126 people. You all know this, it was on my application. I then went on to serve honorably at the Newark Police Department, where I was our sole SWAT medic for both Newark Police Department and Union City PD. Served honorably again, life-saving awards there. In 2012, I was the officer that treated a federal agent that was shot multiple times. I know how to run a police department. I've been to SWAT schools, I've been to SWAT canine schools. Your guys' biggest issue in the city is crime. So to not be invited to at least have an interview and go through the process and given the opportunity to serve, I think was highly unfair, especially when you have 56 candidates. I watched the closed session meeting on Monday, and I could only imagine how many other candidates feel the same way, and to not even be given the opportunity to be interviewed for the process. I would like to request that not everybody's private information on the applications. However, the last 4 questions that you asked where we could write 2,000 characters, and I was there filling out the application, and I filled out so much that I had to actually cut my application down. I know Mayor Mark Salinas, your biggest thing is education. I earned my associate's degree in health science while serving abroad, taking night and weekend classes on a ship. I went on to get a Bachelor's of Science degree in Criminal Justice Management. I know how to run a police department. I think I'd be an excellent candidate. When you're 50 officers short for a police department, crime's your biggest thing. To not be even invited back doesn't seem fair. You've got a chief, or you had a chief last year, who knows where he is. I've been trying to get a hold of him since last year, and he hasn't responded.
Mr. Ramos, I'm sorry, your time is over.
Okay.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
No problem, Mayor.
Next, I'd like to call Ms. Jonavette Cole.
I need to push this? Okay. Good evening. I'm Jonavette Cole with Hayward Promise Neighborhood at Cal State East Bay, and I also have the honor of serving as a trustee for Alameda County Board of Education. I'm here tonight in support of Ms. Butler. I have worked with her at Hayward Promise Neighborhood. She was one of the catalysts that helped us to get another grant. If you know, Hayward Promise Neighborhood is a $30 million educational grant funded by the U.S. Department of Education. And I know it is Mr. Salinas, Mayor Salinas' focus on education. And one thing that is definitely missing from our city is that focus to make certain that all of our scholars have a high quality education. And I do believe that Ms. Butler would be a catalyst for that as well. She was instrumental in an organization that provided early literacy to our scholars, especially at Harder Elementary School. And I recall back in 2013-14, families were moving to Hayward so that they could participate in that program. So I think she would be an exception, an addition to this board, an addition to this city that would make a difference, so that would lift up all our community members. She's an advocate. She's very engaged in the work that she does with Hayward, and we're grateful to have her, and we would like to see her on this board. Thank you.
And just for a point of clarification, did you say Ms. Butler or Ms. Berry?
Ms. Berry.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Cole. Okay, I'd like to transition now to online. And let's see, we have so we have several online. And if you're, Madam City Clerk, do I start at the top or the bottom? Who do we know what the
top, please.
the top? Okay. And you know, I was kind of keeping track of sort of an average time of everybody doing public comments. I appreciate everyone being succinct and short and brief. If you're listening online, if you can also be very succinct and brief. You know, I was watching the California State Legislature some time ago, and in the committee meetings, people who testify, they go up to the podium, they say their name, where they're from, and I support so-and-so, and they walk away. It takes like 10 seconds. And so anyways, I'm not saying taking 10 seconds, but if you can just be very brief and succinct, that way we can proceed with our proceeding tonight. So thank you. Mr. Eddie Alvarez.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Senor Alcalde, City Council, first of all, Happy New Year's. First time I get to address you as the Alcalde of Hayward and the new City Council. I come tonight representing the Alameda County Building and Construction Trades Council. We represent the thousands of construction workers all over Alameda County. We happily have a PLA with the City of Hayward and Hayward Unified, where we've put many local Hayward residents to work on those projects. And some of those residents have become business agents within our organization, which we're very proud of. I stand tonight to support Dan Goldstein for the City Council seat. We are behind him unequivocally 100%. And we hope that City Council appoints him to the open seat. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Alvarez. And thank you for setting the model for short and sweet and concise. Thank you, sir. Next, I'd like to call upon Arietta Chacos.
Hello, this is Arietta Chacos online.
Chacos, yes, I apologize. Proceed.
No worries, no worries. Good evening, Mayor Salinas and council members and City Manager McAdoo. My name is Arietta Chacos, and I support the appointment of Ray Bonilla to Hayward City Council. I've worked with Ray the last 12 years on high-profile regional and national resilience initiatives. As a former City of Berkeley official and in my professional practice currently, I've rarely seen an individual as committed to public service as Ray Bonilla. When he served as Kaiser's National Resilience Director, he elevated the application of community resilience policy and equity in the Bay Area and the nation. His accomplishments are distinctive. He worked with the resilience policy team at the Association of Bay Area Governments, where we developed initiatives to address regional disaster risk at a holistic level. He is a recognized leader in America's community of practice on resilience policy. Ray was an appointed member of the Resilient America Roundtable at the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine. With our committee colleagues, we advised the White House and the Congress on resilience public policy and implementation in communities across the country. Ray understands local government. He has avidly promoted frontline communities and access to equitable planning and fiscal resources for safer housing and improved disaster outcomes. He led Kaiser's internal response to the pandemic, supporting high-risk communities across the state. This outstanding work prompted the Johns Hopkins University Center for Health Security to appoint Ray to its Communivax Project Advisory Board. This national research program on health equity focused on pilot efforts in communities of color around the U.S. Ray guided the development of a health equity playbook for local government officials, which is seen as a national exemplar by policy experts in the country. Ray has a long record of driving results, collaborating, and developing strategies to address community needs. I recommend his appointment to you with the utmost confidence that he will be an excellent City Council member. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to proceed now to Ms. Rachel, I believe it's Commissioner Rachel Zagar.
Hello, good evening, City Council members. As Mayor Salinas just said, my name is Rachel Zargar, and I'm currently the Vice Chair of our Personnel Commission. Previously, I've served as a Community Services Commissioner and a member of Hayward's Policy Committee on Community Safety. So, I understand. I'm going to try to be brief. First off, I'd like to express my sincere gratitude to you all. I remain excited to see how we continue to thrive as a city. I joined today to articulate my support for Ray Bonilla to be appointed to the Open City Council position. I have known Ray since we worked together on the Community Services Commission back in 2016. And what I can say is he's an extremely hardworking, collaborative, and truly balanced leader. He takes initiative, he's graciously direct, and is clearly committed to the advancement of our city, our initiatives, and predominantly to serve the community. He's a lifelong resident of the city, and I've recently learned he's been integrally involved in a number of different initiatives for the past 20 years. He was in the Hayward Youth Commission. He's been completely dedicated to local government and serving in the Hayward Citizens Advisory Commission and the Community Services Commission, now the Planning Commission. And he's held leadership positions in all of these appointments. So I've seen personally many examples of leadership throughout my personal career and in my experience with local government in Hayward. And something that I must incredibly focus on emphasizing is that Ray is both empathetic and assertive. He understands the needs of the community. He's prepared to take action. And when I served in the Community Services Commission, Ray took charge. He ran each meeting incredibly efficiently. He focused our group, which was, from a wide range of backgrounds, both experience and diversity-wise. And he focused us on accomplishing incredibly important objectives, namely understanding the needs of the most vulnerable members of our community, the parameters of the budget that we were allotted, and the organizations that both served the needs of our community and did so. And he focused on using evidence-based methods. It's incredibly important to note that Ray did not use his position as the chair of the Community Services Commission as a pulpit or as a soapbox for pushing his own agenda or seeking a separate appointment elsewhere. And I think, this is an extremely important type of commitment and dedication that we need in our city right now. Lastly, I'll highlight Ray's professional background. I'm sure you've all seen his resume. I think a key point, as evidenced by all of his degrees, certifications, and professional designations, is that he's constantly pushing to expand his horizons, learning more about the subject matter that's relevant to his role. And as applied to Hayward, this means he's going to do his due diligence. He's not going to take a course of action that he hasn't considered previously. And for that reason, I support Ray. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. I'd like to call upon next John Varga.
Good evening, City Council members and Mayor. My name is John Varga. I am a representative for IFPTE Local 21, speaking to you on behalf of the hardworking members of Local 21. We truly are the folks that make the city work, and so it is our great pleasure to be working with you all in this year, and in particular want to express our excitement to be working with our newest City Council members as well. We believe that City of Hayward works best when we have a city council that respects its workforce. Again, these are the folks that do the work that makes the city work. It's why we endorse the candidacy of Dan Goldstein, and it's why I'm speaking with you tonight to support his appointment to the vacant seat on the city council. Thank you so much for your time and have a great evening.
Thank you, Mr. Varga. I'd like to proceed next with Brian Werner.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council members. My name is Brian Werner. I represent hundreds of Hayward's residents with Sheet Metal Workers Local 104. We want to express our sincere support for the appointment of Dan Goldstein in tonight's deliberation for the open City Council seat. I appreciate your time tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to proceed with Faye M.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. My name is Faye Maloney, and I am a member of the Hayward Police Officers Association. On behalf of our association president, Rick Flores, and the HPOA, I would like to voice our support in appointing Mr. Daniel Goldstein to the vacant City Council position. Mr. Goldstein has the best interest in mind to enhancing the quality of life for the Hayward community by placing time and efforts into our schools, business community, and community safety. Mr. Goldstein has served on the Hayward Planning Commission. He actively supports local schools as a board member of the Hayward Education Foundation. He provides a volunteer management and mentoring system for schools, as well as working with local public safety agencies to come up with community-based public safety policies and social programs, with many other accomplishments that I have not listed. We believe Mr. Goldstein would be a great asset, not only to the council, but to the Hayward community. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you, and I'd like to proceed with Sean Kyle.
Hi, good evening, Mayor and City Council. My name is Sean Kyle. I'm a business rep with International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 595. We represent about 2,200 active electricians in Alameda County, of which about 150 are residents of Hayward. We urge you to support and appoint Mr. Dan Goldstein for City Council. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to proceed with TJ.
Oh, hey, Happy New Year, Council. This is TJ of Hayward Concerned Citizens. I know what I'm about to say will not have any bearing on your appointment process this time around, but I did want to reflect on the incredible number of residents in the community who took the time to submit applications. People who have ideas, life experience, and fresh perspectives. People who've lived and worked in Hayward, people who want to see some changes and feel they can make a difference. There were 56 people who applied, 45 people who met the criteria. Council spent a fair amount of time deliberating on how many to choose for interviews. Out of 45 applicants, you narrowed it down to 5. And not surprisingly, they all already hold positions on city commissions. I'm calling this the spigot syndrome. Over the summer, our group was enlightened by a city staff person that the $4 billion worth of projects Hayward has invested in takes each individual in the process, aligning and working like a machine to move these projects forward. And if new people join the council who lack experience, say the wrong thing, or vote the wrong way, the spigot will be cut off. So though you may disagree, you've narrowed down your choices to the usual people, the safe bets that will be able to jump right in and keep that spigot flowing. But when there is a similar scenario of needing to appoint someone to fill a vacant seat in the future, I'd like to propose that for every person holding a city commission that you choose to interview, select an equal number of ordinary community members to interview for the position. Give them a chance to show what they know and share how they plan to give back to their city. At least that way, the process of choosing your next council member is truly equitable. Thanks for hearing me out. Have a good night.
Thank you. I'd like to proceed with Jason Lindsay.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Jason Lindsay. I am President Business Agent of Ironworkers Local 378 and represent 2,600 of the hardest working and safest, most productive ironworkers that exist. We endorsed, we have a couple hundred members that live in Hayward. We endorsed Dan Goldstein early on in his campaign, and we continue to endorse him for this appointment tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to proceed with Robert Stevens.
Good evening, Mayor Salinas and fellow council members. My name is Robert Stevens. I reside on Parkside Drive in Hayward, and I am a planning commissioner. I respect that my fellow planning commissioners, Mr. Ali Sullivan and Mr. Bonilla, were nominated, but for this effort, I highly recommend Mr. Goldstein. I've collaborated with Dan on the Planning Commission for the last 3 years and really admired his attention to the details, moderate approach, and really his tenacity at advocating for the city's strategic roadmap in reviewing our project applications. I think the council member moving forward, especially into a really potentially difficult economy, really needs to have experience working with the city, the basic protocols of how things operate. And finally, I think Dan has a really strong business background that I think will be a real asset to our city. And finally, when I advocated, when Dan initially asked me to provide my recommendation, I asked him, why are you running for council? You know, he basically simply stated, I'm dedicated to public service. I've been that way for 20 years. I think his record proves it, and I highly recommend him. Good evening, and thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to proceed with Jesse Gunn.
Hello, my name is Jesse Gunn. I'm here to advocate for your selection of Austin Bruckner. And to do that, I wanted to highlight his experience in serving our community as through the creation of the Castro Valley Pride. Way back, I'm not sure if you'll remember, when we did our community public safety surveys, there was an alarming statistic that said that LGBTQ members of the community felt the most unsafe in our community. And you may be surprised to hear that because it was mentioned in the presentation and then never really mentioned again after that. And I think that's because we don't have a member of council that is specifically part of that community that can represent that community. I want to highlight a very successful appointment process that happened here in Hayward with HUSD when they appointed former trustee Gabriel Chaparro. He did not run for the office, but he was appointed and served very well. And one of the amazing things about it was that because he was Latino and he was the only Latino member on the HUSD board, he could see things from a perspective that the other members of the board could not. I am here advocating for Austin, not just because he is an amazing person and very resilient, but also because he's passionate for the community. And I feel that he would be an excellent choice for city council. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to proceed to Matthew Goldstein.
Yes, hello. I'm Matthew Goldstein, Dan Goldstein's son, and I would really appreciate if the honorable city council members would vote for my dad. He's an outstanding member of the Hayward community, having served in multiple different volunteer positions since he moved here when I was still a baby in 2005. On top of that, he exhibits great qualities of a leader. For instance, he's very patient. After my mom died in 2014, he had to raise 2 disgruntled teenagers by himself. And as such, my sister and I weren't the easiest to deal with. And yet, He has come out of it respected by my sister and me, and I'm very proud to call him my best friend. He dedicates a lot of time to the city and is always telling me about how excited he is about the solid chance he has at serving for a larger group of people. Selecting him for the appointment is a win for the Hayward leadership and a win for our great populace, and I hope my message today has helped the City Council understand that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I'd like to proceed to Raquel Johnson, I believe.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
We can, but it's very low.
Uh-oh.
Oh, now we can hear you.
Okay, very good. Good evening. I am Raquel Johnson, Vice President of the BWAPA Hayward South County Chapter. BWAPA stands for Black Women Organized for Political Action. Our mission is to activate, motivate, promote, support, and educate African American women about the political process, as well as encourage involvement. And so I am here as the representative in support of Artavia Berry. And as we have already, with our president, Rita Duncan, have sent a letter of support as well. Ms. Berry has been very active in our community, and she continues to provide support for those that cannot provide support for themselves. She has a great concern for the residents of the community and has demonstrated a deep commitment for advancing partnerships, resources, and politics that work to protect the most vulnerable population of our community. Ms. Berry is a leader on the Hayward County Community Service Commission, and she demonstrates her capacity to lead, build alliances, and engage the community towards positive outcomes. So again, we'd like to continue to support our members, and we are definitely here to support Ms. Artavia Berry. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just wanted to compliment all of the speakers for just being really concise, brief, and short. So I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. Next caller is Chris Pangelina.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello, everyone. My name is Chris Pangelina. I'm a resident of South Hayward. I'm here to express my support for Ray Bonilla for City Council. I've personally seen Ray grow into the person he is today because I have had the pleasure of going to school with Ray in Hayward Unified School District from elementary at Harder Elementary, Chavez Middle School, and Tennyson High School. Ray is not only a product of Hayward, he is a representation of the citizens in the community of Hayward. He is not only a proud and open member of the BIPOC and LGBT community, but he represents that by being involved in his engagement with those communities as well. His commitment to serving the people of Hayward runs deep, which can be seen by his 2 decades of being involved in a number of commissions and boards for the city of Hayward. One of the things that I would like to highlight is Ray's commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, which dates back to when he first embarked on his journey in 2004, when he joined the Youth Commission and represented Tennyson High School, which is a school made up of predominantly students of color who come from working class backgrounds. Ray understands the diverse experiences of working class families in Hayward and the importance of making sure all lived experiences are included in the decision making. He is someone who will listen to the voices of those who are most marginalized and ensure their voices are elevated in spaces they are not represented. Not only as a queer community member myself of Hayward, but as a longtime friend, I know that Ray's commitment to serving our community and making sure that all of Hayward's citizens are included in the process are at the forefront of his values. He is someone who will center equity and our most marginalized communities in his actions and decisions. Ray is a public servant and a leader of Hayward and the greater Alameda County through his work and volunteer experience. Hayward is the heart of the Bay and is one of the most diverse cities in California. I believe that Ray represents that diversity and will move Hayward forward in an inclusively and compassionately way. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to proceed to Sheree Green.
Hello, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. My name is Sheree Green. I am the cousin of Artavia Berry, and I'm calling in to give my support for Artavia, who is a strong advocate for education. in literacy, and specifically in literacy intervention for all students. She's community oriented with a strong focus towards equity. She is someone who is for the people, and it comes out of a place of genuine love and service. She has been in service to the people in the community and in her family her entire life. She continues to carry our family's legacy of service to others, and undoubtedly will continue this service for the people of Hayward, serving on your city council. And I am calling in support of Artavia Berry. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to proceed to Bill Espinola.
Good evening, Mayor. I'm Bill Espinola, Hayward resident. I'm calling in support of Dan Goldstein. He has the experience, and I think he would work well with the current council. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to proceed to Danny Vickers. Danny Vickers' hand is now down. I don't know if Danny Vickers is there anymore, but I will proceed to Crystal.
No, I'm here.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, no.
Mayor and council, sorry about that. My name is Danny Vickers. I'm here as an executive board member of Hayward Firefighters Local 1909. I'm here in support of Dan Goldstein. We strongly urge you to appoint him for his council. For city council, Dan is the only candidate here today that put his name in for the election this year. Dan received the third most votes in a very close and competitive race. We believe the citizens of Hayward have spoken in his support for his candidacy. Thank you, Mayor and council.
Thank you. I'd like to proceed to Crystal Araujo.
Hi, good evening, council and City of Hayward residents. I'm calling in tonight in support of Ray Bonilla for the open appointment seat. Ray and I have worked together on the Community Services Commission, and he is, like myself, we are both born and raised in Hayward. So it's something that we hold close, dear to our hearts, since we have dedicated not only our lives here, but our service, and continue to live and support this city. I think that something that gets lost sometimes with public service is the folks that have been there because they grew up here and that they care about the city. And Ray is one of those people. He has all the qualities of a great leader. I hear a lot of great qualities with everyone else. But again, like I mentioned, his love for Hayward, his background in Hayward, and then I'm endorsing him because I think he's the best for Hayward. I think not who is the best council member, but who does Hayward need? Someone that's ready to fight for Hayward. I represent the Oscar Grant Foundation and am active in a lot of other roles in the community because I care about Hayward, and I hope tonight that can shine through. Thank you, council.
Thank you. I'd like to proceed to Ben Yee.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. My name is Ben Yee. A couple of you probably know who I am. I'm currently one of the planning commissioners with the City of Fremont, and currently one of the first vice presidents for the League of California Cities, representing all planning commissioners here in Northern California. But I come here as a private citizen, and I'd like to recommend and appoint Dan Goldstein as your next city council person, because I've had the pleasure of being able to work with him and meet with him over the past year. I've seen him work really hard for all the members within Hayward. He's easy to work with. And I think somebody else said, one of the words I wanted to say, he's very honest, but he's also a great listener, and he also is a doer. So I just wanted to say that he would be a great city council person for the city of Hayward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And that concludes all of the callers. I don't know if we have any more folks in here. No? Okay. So I'd like to close public comments. And I just really wanted to thank everybody for keeping them short and brief. So I'd like to close public comments. Next is city manager's comments. And I know the city manager is here online. So Madam City Manager, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Salinas, and good evening, everyone. I apologize for not being there in person. I had some family obligations this evening and I'm participating remotely. But listening in and interested to hear the results of the interviews this evening. I just wanted to remind the community that the storms are still with us. And so please take precautions in terms of traveling around the community. And we still do have sandbags available by the Hayward Animal Shelter near Barnes Court. So you can still retrieve sandbags. I also wanted to let folks know we had to unfortunately close the Weeks Branch Library today because of water damage in the roof and leaking into the building. We hope to reopen the building tomorrow, but please keep an eye on social media and the city's website for updates on closures for the Weeks Branch Library. So I just a word of caution for everyone during the storms, and that's all I had this evening. Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Okay, thank you. So I'd like to close city manager's comments, proceed to action items, and our first action item is the city council vacancy selection and appointment process for a 2-year council seat. And I'd like to have the city clerk proceed and kick that off. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. If you could please let me know if you see it.
Yes.
And as we wait to have it projected on up there for the audience in the council chambers. Thank you. There you go. Very good. Thank you again. As Mayor Salinas mentioned, this is part of the selection and appointment process for a 2-year council seat. I'm going to be brief on my presentation. What you see projected on the screen is our timeline, which started on December 13th when the council seat was created, the vacancy was created. This evening, we are going to conduct interviews, and hopefully we will appoint a new member after the interviews. As you may recall, we had 45 qualified candidates who submitted applications. On January 5th, we received nominations for 5 applicants. You see on the screen the names that were nominated by council members. I just want to mention that the nominations were submitted to my office, and they were individual submittals that came to my office. According to the staff report, we are going to start the interviews with a random draw of the names. We have 5 names. There is a box at the dais, as you could see. We already have the names of the 5 applicants. Mayor Salinas is going to draw the names at the beginning of the interviews. Okay, I think my screen changed. In terms of the interview process, we have allocated 30 minutes for each applicant. We are going to start with 3 minutes, and those 3 minutes will be to present the applicant's qualifications and for them to discuss their candidacy. Following that, we are going to set the timer to 25 minutes for council to ask questions and for candidates to respond. At the end, candidates will have 2 minutes to make closing remarks. And again, we are going to use the timer. We are going to have the bell as sort of make an announcement when the time is up. All candidates will be in the council chambers except for the first currently all candidates are in the council chambers, just for the audience. The first candidate will remain in the council chambers, and the rest of them will be escorted to a room that we have behind the council chambers, and they'll wait for their time to be called. So we will have someone from my team letting them know when their time is up. Our candidates will not have access to technology they are not to communicate with anyone, and they're not going to watch the meeting in the room behind the council chambers, just for public information. In terms of the interviews, there are no pre-established questions. The mayor will allow each member of the city council to ask one question of each applicant. And the mayor is going to manage the order of questions with each candidate. We want to make sure that the council members ask the same question of each applicant. After the interviews, the mayor will proceed with the call for nominations. As we have stated in the staff report, nominations do not require a second, but a motion and a second are required to close the nomination period. Following the nominations, the mayor will call for a vote on each nominee. The first nominee to receive 4 or more votes will be the new member. Council members do not have to vote, and they could abstain from voting if they wish. Voting will continue until one nominee receives 4 or more votes. Once the interview and the nomination process is successful, the council could proceed with the appointment. During the appointment process, the mayor would call for a motion to approve a resolution appointing a council member for the city of Hayward. Of course, the council will vote on that motion, and after the vote, the mayor will direct me to administer the oath of affirmation to the new member of the city council. I believe that outlined the process that we will follow, which was also in the staff report, Mayor. And with that, I will stop sharing. And I believe at this point, if there are any questions, clarifying questions, we could take those.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so I wanted to see if any of the council members have any question about process. Councilmember Syrup.
I was just curious, after the interview, will there be a brief intermission before we move into discussion? Or can there be?
We can possibly do that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I will, yeah, that's a good point. Okay, if there are no further questions, we can proceed with the drawing. But before we do that, I'm gonna sort of evoke chair's privilege here and make a couple of comments. First, I really want to say thank you to all of you to applying. This is not an easy process by any stretch of the imagination. And this is not like any other job interview, right? This is a very public interview. It's, there's the 6 of us that have the responsibility to pick who we will be working with in the next 2 years. In 2 years, you will be running, or you may or may not be running for re-election. But I want to tell you that the council really, really takes this task seriously, and we, are taking this task thoughtfully, and we, and I think. Today, especially today, I think it's important that we all project to the community that we're orderly, we're professional, and that we really put the interests of the city first. And I think that that's sort of the awesome responsibility that we all have up here. I mean, it's, I know every single one of us up here, and I know that is something that we do very seriously, and we know the honor and the privilege that it is to be up here. And so I just wanted to just tell the candidates that one, thank you for putting your name in the hat here and subjecting yourself to this. I also wanted to say that given the unique dynamic and the unique context of this process. Tomorrow, we all, work on commissions. We volunteer on commissions in the community, and we do community service. Tomorrow, we're going to continue to work together, right? And I think that that's what the community expects. That's what I think that's the expectation of us here on the council. This is I know politics being politics, but I like to think that the Hayward City Council really sort of takes our work seriously, so much so that at the end of the day, we can work together. We can proceed to work together and advance the vision and the mission of the city. And so I just wanted to say thank you for being here. I know we have families that are here. Families are watching online. And I just really wanted to congratulate all of you before we go into this process. So with that said, Madam City Manager, we can go pull the names. First person is Miss Artavia Berry. Second is Austin Bruckner. Next is Daniel Goldstein. Next is Aiden Ali Sullivan. And then next is Ray Bonilla.
All right. Thank you, Mayor Salinas. So now you all heard the order. If we could have the 4 applicants that are not interviewing at this time to please follow Avinta to conference room 2B. Thank you very much. And please enjoy the water, coffee, and refreshments. Thank you. Okay. And Mayor Salinas, I will hand the floor to you after this, okay?
Okay. So now we are to the questions, and we have, you may come up and you may sit down or stand up, and just make sure you hit the button, and the light has to be red on the microphone.
It's up to you, and this is for you.
Okay.
The chamber is the only place where red means go.
Okay.
Okay, so before, okay, so now we're going to go to questions.
Do I get 3 minutes?
Oh, that's right. You have 2-minute opening, and then we'll proceed.
2 minutes or 3 minutes?
I believe it's 3 minutes.
Mayor, is it 3 minutes?
3 minutes is the opening statement, so go ahead.
Correct.
Okay.
3 minutes
Yeah,
for
3 minutes.
the opening statement.
And closing is 2 minutes.
2 minutes for closing statement.
Okay. Yeah, she said, yeah.
Okay, great. All right, thank you. So first of all, greetings everyone, to everyone on the council, to everyone watching online and everyone in the room. I'm going to start by saying that it is an honor to be mixed up with Octavia Butler at all times. Happens all the time. Before I even get started, my name is Artavia Berry, for those of you who have not met me or heard of me. And I want to dedicate this interview in honor of all of my ancestors and in honor of the Ohlone people on whose land we do preside and sit. Without them, we would not be here, so respect and honor to them. And I also would like to say that today, as I thought about what I would say and how I answer questions, I want to offer the Akan principle of Sankofa. While I will look back and talk about some of what we've done historically, it will only be as a point of learning, because I think our task is to learn from the past in order to set a chart for an innovative and bright future. A little bit about me. Why am I seeking the appointment? Who am I? I've been serving the community pretty much since I could talk and walk. Because of my early childhood in Chicago, I grew up very poor. Poor in money, but not poor in love. We were rich in love, and no matter what we had at home in our cupboards, we always shared. I've been a part of ministry my entire life and was even ordained at 15 years old. I would never do that to a teenager, but that's my story, and it made me who I am today. Moving along through my own life, I've had the opportunity to learn from some really great mentors who saw a gift in me and decided to pour in me. As a young AmeriCorps member, I learned from the best minds Chicago had to offer. I learned the Alinsky method of organizing of and for the people. I learned asset-based community development from the now departed Jody Kretzman, and have been very proudly forwarding those learnings throughout my career. I have served in the nonprofit sector literally my entire 30-year career and have moved over $250 million in resources into under-resourced communities, including here in Hayward, Chicago, and abroad. I don't do this because I'm seeking a high seat. I do this because it's my calling. It's who I am. Whether I am appointed or not, I will continue to serve my community with respect and with honor to others. I believe we can dare to dream bigger, y'all. And so throughout my answers, again, I'll look back, but I believe we can dream bigger. Our city is an amazing place. My family selected Hayward when we came here as our home intentionally. We intend to stay here, and I see so much potential for the future. Thank you for having me, and I'll stop talking with these last 5 seconds.
Thank you. Okay. So I'm going to now move to questions from council. And I believe last time I started way on the left side, and I'm not going to do that today. I'm going to start way on my right side with Councilmember Roach.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Ms. Berry, for being here and for taking the time to go through this process. I know it's difficult, but you seem comfortable there with your opening statement, so thank you very much for being here. So my question has to do around sustainability and environmental policy. And I wanted to ask you, so Hayward has been a leader regionally and statewide actually on addressing climate change. We're really doing some amazing things here. What do you think Hayward has gotten right on environmental policy? And what's one thing we haven't done yet that you think we might do?
Thank you for the question. I think that climate change and the environment is an issue that is insanely important, and I've been really proud of the work we've done. Everything from looking at how to create a more energy efficient city, working around water access, water cleanliness, and I'm always impressed by the work of a particular council member who prides himself on keeping our environment clean. I love those posts. I think it's important that we take pride in our city and think about our environment in terms of its physical appearance, whether that's picking up trash, whether that's keeping our water clean, whether it's clean air. We won't have a place to live for generations to come if we don't do our work today on these efforts. When we talk about environment, I also want to add that oftentimes we talk about the environment and it's the things that I just mentioned, but it also includes the environment in which our children and our communities are growing. that environment is also something important for us to consider. How do we cultivate an environment where all of us are receiving everything we need to grow and to become our best selves? And while I believe your question is specific to land, soil, air, and water, I want to take the moment to point out that while those things are insanely important to the environment, food access is an environmental issue as well. Jobs is an environmental issue as well. Adequate housing is an environmental issue as well. And so I want to challenge many of us to expand our framework when we talk about it, to include those other factors that promote a safe and soil-rich environment for our citizens to thrive in. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Yeah, my follow-up question was about environmental justice, and you sort of went there anyway, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yep, thank you. Councilmember Marquez.
Thank you, Mayor. Hello, Ms. Berry, welcome.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask, knowing that the budget is important for every member of the council, and one of the first and biggest decisions you'll make as a council member, I have a couple parts to this question. How big is the city's annual budget? What are the 3 sources of revenue? And what is your knowledge of the need for a new police building, and any ideas you have about how we would generate revenue to secure a new building?
Okay, I'm going to try to keep up because I think there were 4 parts in there, and I got, 2 minutes, 20 seconds? Okay. The budget. So our current city budget is just over $400 million annually, based on my reading of fiscal year 23. Your second part of that was in terms of our revenue sources. I understand our primary revenue sources to be property and sales taxes, along with 4 or 5 different measures that we've passed along the past couple decades, including Measure A, D, C, and NN, which we have yet to implement as a courtesy and as a compassionate response, given we're post-COVID and dealing with hotels and such, giving people time to recover. I am also familiar with Measure C, which helped build our library and our learning center, as well as our fire stations, including the training center that's going up down the street from my house on Winton. My son is excited to see that building every day, and I've allowed him to guess for many weeks what might be going up, and he rightly guessed fire station. Would you mind repeating the third part of your question?
There is a need to construct a new police building, and what are your thoughts about the potential cost and how we would raise revenue to construct that building?
Yeah, I think a couple things in response there. I hope that when we're thinking about the construction of a new police facility, that we think out of the box, that we think innovatively. And what I mean by that is, think about the community schools model, where across the country, we looked at schools not only as centers of education from 9 to 3, but we saw them as 24/7 access points, potentially. Imagine if we built a police department that housed way more services than just policing, where there were more services there, perhaps medical services, perhaps.
Okay, I'm going to cut you off because I want to make sure you answer the question. How are we going to pay for it?
Yes, ma'am, I'm coming. You asked me what I thought about the construction of it. So I think it's an opportunity to do more than just normal, what people think of in policing. It's an opportunity for us to do add-on service, wraparound services housed in that facility. How we pay for it, I think we have to get really innovative. I've gone through that budget probably 20 times at this point preparing for today, and there's not a lot to cut, right? We can't think about cutting. We have to think about ways to innovate revenue. One of the ideas that I propose for us to consider are establishing cultural zones throughout the city to make Hayward a destination city and drive up revenue through tourism opportunities. When you think about the rich history we already have in terms of like the Ohlone culture. Imagine an Ohlone cultural zone, or a Russell City cultural zone that brought back the blues. This could be a major destination for people coming to visit the Bay Area and bring us tons of revenue. Now, it wouldn't happen overnight, certainly, but it could be a really great opportunity for us to not only elevate the cultural importance of our contributions as a city to the world stage, but also drive additional revenue to our city. So I would want to think about new ways of raising money, such as that.
Thank you.
Councilmember Andrews.
Thank you, and thank you, Commissioner or Chair Berry, for attending and submitting your application today. I have a question about the California Environmental Quality Act, and many are calling for reform and wanted to know what impacts do you see of CEQA to the local development?
Councilmember Andrews, you have asked a question that I am not well informed on. So I'm going to say that I don't have a good answer for you right now, and I'm not going to make up an answer. This is a space where I would definitely need to do more learning. I would seek more coaching and development, hopefully from you as a colleague, to learn more and to form an informed opinion on this question.
I appreciate your honesty. Thank you.
You know I got it.
Councilmember Zedmeño.
Thank you for being here. What is public safety to you?
Thank you. To me, public safety means, considering all the needs of our community. Early on in my AmeriCorps career, I was responsible for building a citywide community safety network. And when we built this network, many people thought we were going to unite all of the police departments to do various work throughout the community. And while the police departments were an integral part of that work, they were a fraction of the partners that we pulled in. Community safety means pulling players from all throughout the community together. That includes our medical providers, our faith leaders, our schools, our parents, grandparents, young people together to set up an environment, again, that's rich in opportunity for us to not only be physically safe, but to be mentally and emotionally safe as well. And so when I think about community safety, I think much broader than police presence. I think, what does it mean to have great mental health services? What does it mean to have a robust education program? What does it mean to have great job readiness, access to home ownership, right? Down payment funds? How are we supporting our citizens in really, again, creating the lives that they want for themselves? So I view it in very broad terms. And that's because I know that all of these issues are incredibly interconnected. You can't talk about one without understanding the impact of the other. So, that's my perspective on it, Councilman.
Councilmember Syra.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you for being here tonight, Chair Berry. Nearly 1/2 of Hayward residents are renters, and approximately 1/3 of Hayward residents are burdened by housing costs. Please describe your thoughts on the housing crisis in Hayward, the challenges that it creates for residents, and what you believe the city can do to address it.
That is a big question, Councilman. We have a real big job in front of us. I am insanely concerned about the crisis I see unfolding in front of us, so much so that I've pivoted in my career to be a part of the solution around what I see going on. I want to highlight that pretty much everywhere, if you isolate Hayward or isolate San Francisco or isolate Oakland, I want to call attention to the fact that we're dealing with a racial equity issue. We are dealing with the long-standing results of institutionalized racism. When you look at who's unhoused and who's on the streets, who can't afford rent, whose income is really, really small compared to what's available here, it is overwhelmingly the African American and Latino communities. That's not by accident, and it's not our fault, but we have an opportunity to reverse that trend. So again, I see an overrepresentation of certain minorities in the homeless population. And so I think we have to consider culturally responsive and culturally relevant ways to reach out to those members. I think we have to figure out, I saw we did a feasibility study just 2 years ago to figure out our capacity for more affordable housing. I think we're going to have to stay on that track, knowing that most of the people who are experiencing this hardship, they're not going to have $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 per month to pay on rent. We're going to have to look at taking what we have available and really prioritizing units that are affordable for the people who are suffering the most from being unhoused. I will also steal this moment to say I'm really worried what's going to happen when all the moratoriums end. There are a number of people who won't have protection, and I think this goes on both ends. There are going to be renters who may face having to move without being prepared, maybe not having enough money for the next security deposit or for moving, expenses. But I'm also worried about the landlords, as I've been talking to some of the smaller mom and pop landlords who have people that are taking advantage, that are working, making $80,000+ a year and refuse to pay their rents and jeopardizing their ability to create wealth for their families. So I think it's a really complex issue. And this is one that, I've made a little bit of a pivot in my own career because it's such a crisis for our region. I want to be a part of the solution, and I would bring a ton of innovation and a ton of resource and ideas for us to consider how we solve it here in our own city.
Thank you.
And then my question is, what do you think is the central concern amongst downtown merchants today?
Based on my walking in and out, I think, it's been difficult post-COVID, right? People, when I walk downtown right now, I see a lot of my favorite places no longer exist. Plate's gone, Charlotte's is gone, my very beloved game, Miss Pac-Man, the game store is gone. I think this has been an insanely difficult time for our businesses here in the city. So I think if I were to reflect on what I heard from those particular owners and from my hairstylist who had to move from downtown over to the industrial section of our city, I think folks are worried about, just the rebounding of traffic to those businesses. I think they're worried about unhoused folks. Many many don't know how to respond when someone is unhoused and maybe they're presenting with mental health. A lot of them do need more resources around the services that they can call beyond the police, right? I hear a lot of concern about that. I hear concern about how am I going to grow my business? But what support can I get to help me sustain myself until I become profitable again? I hear from small Black business owners about the struggle to keep up with the rent and everything while they're rebounding. These are the things I'm hearing in community. And I do think, again, we have our work cut out for us. There are no easy answers here. From my services on the Community Services Commission, I recognize that the difficulty is in the process. It's not in the idea, it's not in the outcome, it's how do we craft a path to get there where our small businesses can flourish, where they have the confidence to keep going without worrying about bankrupting or having their windows knocked out or, all the things that sometimes happen, when you're recovering from a crisis that we've just been through. I will offer that I think we have another unique opportunity to innovate. Imagine if Hayward had an innovation hub for businesses, or for some of the small businesses who couldn't survive the pandemic, where we had a facility where they could come back and maybe rent a small portion of that facility and begin to rebuild their clienteles and begin to rebuild their presence in the city, get their revenues up high enough where they could get back into their own storefront or into their own facility. I think we just got to start thinking out the box a bit. And again, it's not tomorrow, but it's an opportunity for us to build it better, down the line.
Okay, and I don't know if there's any other questions up here. Otherwise, you have 2 minutes.
2 minutes. What to say in closing? Again, thank you so much for this opportunity. As you all know, I've worked with almost everyone on this council in one way or another, so I will reiterate, while I really would like to serve as your colleague on the city council, I want to say that unequivocally, I really want to serve with you. Even if I'm not selected, I will continue to serve our community. I will continue to be a thought partner. I have so enjoyed and so grown in my role on the Community Services Commission. And I think that commission has evolved over the past several years to do far more than the funding work we've done. And I think it's just a small testament of what newcomers can bring to the table. Who thought that we would get all those things done out of the Community Services Commission? And I believe I came before this body as a presenter last year, and your comment, and I will quote Mayor Salinas, "This has been the most substantial body of work to come out of this commission in many years." I will bring that same tenacity, the same commitment, the same innovation to bear if you select me tonight. So thank you for the interview. Thank you for the opportunity. And thank the gods that I got to go first and I get to hear my colleagues. And I should say the whole group is fantastic. I am friends with this entire group. You guys have a difficult choice to make tonight. I respect that. And I'm looking forward to continuing to work with you regardless once tonight is over. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for your service on the Community Services Commission. Appreciate it. Madam City Clerk, bring out candidate number 2. And also for the council, everyone have water? Because I knew, yeah. Everyone, there's water. Okay, there's water here. Okay, all right. Good evening. So you have 3 minutes to make an opening statement, and then we have some questions for you, and then you have 2 minutes for a closing statement. So you may proceed.
Thank you so much. Good evening. My name is Austin Bruckner, and I am the Vice Chair of the City's Community Services Commission, a delegate to the California Democratic Party, an associate to the County Central Committee, and I've led a local LGBTQ nonprofit for about 13 years. I want to start by thanking the mayor, the council, council members, vice mayor, staff for today's process. I also want to thank the 56 individuals that took the time out of their day to apply. During the public comment period, I fully support Mr. Ramos's request to make these applications public, as well as the support letters that came in for the various candidates. I also fully support the Hayward Concerned Citizens group that called in to really find new ways that we can uplift emerging leaders in our community. I stand before you as one of 5 commissioners that was picked to interview today. I think the city can and should do better to uplift folks, and I fully support that request. I believe that policymakers often fail to reflect the diverse life experiences that far too many in our community face. Leaders that know firsthand and firsthand understand the struggles of working class individuals are then and only then able to develop exceptional public policies to uplift the quality of life. I could and should have been another statistic. I should have been the 7th or so generation addict in my family. I should have been yet another victim of generational trauma, yet another perpetuator of unnecessary violence, because as a kid, that was all I knew. I thought every kid experienced eviction, domestic violence. They had parents with alcohol and drug addiction. They spent weeks living in a hotel or doing an extended camping spree like we did, when in fact we lived at a local park. I thought every family at some point ended up in a shelter like Fesco, where we stayed. I thought that every kid lacked access to a lunch and that they relied so heavily on the kindness of others when the system fails. In life, countless individuals, for me, stepped up, but most people don't have that. Growing up, I lived several days a week in what many would consider a highly dysfunctional home environment. But then on the weekend, these strangers would pick me up, and I would live a normal childhood. I call them my grandparents, although we look nothing alike, and we share no blood. I often tell the story of the first time that I realized they were Puerto Rican, but I myself am white. I'm reminded of it every time they experience those microaggressions when they interact with our healthcare industry or our local government, when they go to a hardware store or walk down their own street. We need a council member that understands this, that will fight for our residents, especially those that live in the shadows. We need champions for affordable and safe housing options, pathways out of poverty, core safety net services, and the wave of upcoming evictions. We need strong partners with labor and nonprofits who helped us through the pandemic.
Thank you. Okay, now we're going to move to questions. I appreciate that. I started to my right earlier. I'm going to start way to my left. Councilmember Syrup.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you for presenting, Vice Chair Bruckner. And thank you for that moving opening. Nearly 1/2 of Hayward residents are renters. Approximately 1/3 are burdened by housing costs. Please describe your thoughts on the housing crisis in Hayward, the challenges it's creating for residents, and what you believe the city can do about it.
Thank you for that question. I myself, I'm a homeowner in Hayward, live a block away from Sulphur Creek. I bought my condo. It is falling apart through a first-time homebuyer program through Alameda County. Alameda County gave me $220,000 to buy our place, and I struggle every single day to make that mortgage payment. I have what many would consider a good-paying job. Our most recent housing element here in the city said that 71% of seniors who are renters struggle to pay that rent. That number drastically increases for folks that are immigrants. It jumps up to 172%. And then for our students, those that attend, Chabot College or Cal State East Bay, they struggle. And so, the council often says, we need to preserve units, we need to protect units, and we need to produce more units. And that's absolutely a great policy. There is a wave of pending evictions coming, and there is a dire need to prepare for that, a dire need to prepare for those safety net services. There are a lot of families struggling, and the council needs to do that regional work to step up. We need to provide tenants the tools they need to organize. We need to support small landlords. There's a lot of work to do.
Thank you.
Councilmember Sedminian.
Thank you for being here. What is public safety to you?
Public safety? That's a great question. Public safety is the ability for folks to walk down the street to feel safe. And that means something different to everyone. To someone that's LGBT, it might mean being able to walk down, holding the hand of someone you love. To someone that's, Latinx, for example, it might mean the ability to be in the community and not have your citizenship questioned, not have to, if you're someone who identifies as African American, to not have to fear that you're going to get pulled over by police and be harassed. It also means, having police do their job. No one becomes a cop to become a psychiatrist. I fully support the HEART program that the city has implemented. I also feel that, through the CAB at the city, there's some great community engagement. I'd like to see a stronger partnership with the different commissions. Really supporting our officers, supporting our partners. In my neighborhood, there's a string of catalytic converter thefts. And, while it may not seem the most serious crime, a catalytic converter can cost hundreds of dollars. It can be the difference between whether or not a family is going to be able to make rent that month. So those are the kind of core safety public services I'd like to see addressed. Thank you.
Councilmember Andrews.
Thank you, and thank you for being here tonight. Many are calling on the reform of the California Environmental Quality Act and wanted to know, what do you see are the impacts of it to local development?
The balance between building affordable units, making sure we're producing enough housing stock, but also, keeping in mind that with rising sea level, our coastline, our shoreline, it is at risk. I do support some changes to the CEQA process. It should be a tool to help preserve our environment. It should not be something that gets in the way of our ability to build those quality units. I would without having spoken directly to the Sierra Club about this, I'd like to engage them. I'd like to, engage some of the nonprofit housing builders in that kind of discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Marquez.
Thank you. Welcome. My question is regarding the budget. So as a council member, that's one of the biggest decision-making you'll have to make with respect to the budget. This question has a couple parts. Can you tell us how big the city's annual budget is? What are the 3 biggest sources of revenue? And what are your thoughts about the need for a new police department? Do you agree with that? And any ideas on how we would cover the cost of that construction?
I'm going to start with the final part of your question, if I can. I myself have not engaged with Hayward PD. I haven't engaged with our union regarding it. Having not taken a tour myself, I don't actually have a stance, to be honest. All of that work would need to be done before I could answer that question. I do believe that, all city workers deserve to come to a space that's safe to work in, where they can do their job in an efficient manner. All of us did some research through this process. I can't help but notice that the city has made great efforts regarding an open data portal. It needs some help. It's several years outdated. And that's something that, I would like to see addressed. Can you repeat the first part of your question, please?
The general fund, what is the amount of it, and the 3 sources of revenue?
3 sources of revenue, sales tax, taxes from property taxes, and then, state and local funding that contributes towards it.
And do you know the total fund amount?
It's 400 and something.
Okay, and then what are your ideas on how we're going to pay for a new police building?
I don't know if I support a new police building.
Okay.
So without having toured the facility, I don't have an answer.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Roach.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Bruckner, for being here tonight. My question is around sustainability and environmental policy. Hayward has been a leader both regionally and statewide on addressing climate change on a municipal level. What do you think Hayward has gotten right on environmental policy, and what's one thing we haven't done yet that you would like to see Hayward do?
I think the work of our Hayward Green and Clean Task Force is incredible. I think the work of community organizations like Hey Coco to do these frequent neighborhood cleanups is vital. I'd like to see that stressed, and I'd like to see a greater emphasis on that work. I appreciate the addition of the racial equity lens in our most recent climate action plan. I myself, I'm on the board for my homeowners association. I think I'm the only person in my building that recycles. I would like to see the city, through the Stop Waste Board and the different efforts, really do some work with those multi-unit residents to see how we get them engaged in something as simple as recycling and keeping in mind the food scrap legislation that came from the state and how we roll that out.
Okay, thanks. And then what about, what is one area that you feel like, one policy area that you feel like Hayward has gotten right?
I think the support of our Clean and Green Task Force.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for your answer.
And then my question is, what do you think is a central concern of merchants in downtown?
Central emergence?
A central concern of merchants in downtown.
I myself, my first job was working in a chamber of commerce. I believe that, many small businesses are engaged with our chamber, but not all of them. And I think, when we talk about business, it's not just the chamber's voice that matters. It's those small businesses that they may not know to join a chamber. There may be a language dialogue issue or something else, but it's really engaging those kind of ethnic, small business-owned organizations, providing them with those micro grants, and frequently also addressing that, our region has a homeless problem. And all too often, that burden falls on those small business owners. So giving them the tools, the resources they need, who do they call?
Thank you. Thank you. So that concludes our questions. So now you have 2 minutes to wrap it up.
I appreciate it. Just want to thank each of you for allowing me the opportunity to interview you before you this evening. Again, my name is Austin Bruckner. I'm 28, and I currently serve as the Vice Chair of the city's Community Services Commission. I've called Hayward my home for nearly 7 years, and I've spent my entire life here in Alameda County. I call Hayward my home for many of the same reasons as our neighbors. It's one of the final, somewhat affordable pockets within the Bay Area. It's a diverse city it's up and coming because of the work of each of you on this council. We as a council need to carefully balance the need for housing, our environmental issues, the critical role of our small businesses, our desire to attract those new and innovative housing and shopping experiences. And this work, it can't be done at the expense of displacement of longtime Hayward residents. We can't do this work without engagement with our labor partners, other stakeholders, and regionally. Tonight, you will hear from a diverse group of candidates with a breadth of knowledge and a wide range of skill sets. There are many issues impacting our city: pending wave of eviction, skyrocketing housing costs, families that struggle day in and day out to put food on the table. We have a lot of work to do. I'm honored to have the support of State Senator Aisha Wahab, former candidate for State Assembly Jennifer Esteen, the South Alameda County Progressive Democrats. Wide range. I know each of you received letters from different folks across our region. Some of you received calls from Assemblymember Bill Quirk, Dublin Mayor Melissa Hernandez, and others. And I'm just so incredibly proud of this process. You know, in closing, out there somewhere is a kid and a family who has an opportunity to benefit so greatly from the work that each of you do on this council. And to be a part of that work would be the ultimate privilege. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and thank you for your service on the Community Services Commission. Really appreciate your work on that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think we're out getting the third candidate. I might take Councilmember Syrup's comment suggestion at that end. I'm just saying. Let's do it after this. Yeah.
Hello.
Good evening.
Congratulations.
Okay, so we have a 3-minute opening, and then we will have questions, and then you'll have a 2-minute close, and that'll be it.
Okay, for your sake and mine, I'm going to try to be brief with my remarks.
Absolutely. So I think, so watch the cue. Okay.
Okay,
go
very
ahead.
good. So first of all, congratulations, Mr. Mayor, and congratulations, Member Syrup and Roche, and thank you all for this wonderful opportunity to meet and talk about how I might be your next colleague on council. I have volunteered in every community that I've lived in. From the time I was 8 or 9 years old is when I began community activism. My Jewish heritage informs me that even a little bit of hate can have disastrous consequences for the community. So from an early age, my parents encouraged me, and I followed happily, to be a voice for what's right in our community. And very proudly so, have stood up for the earliest age that I recall was, like I say, 8 or 9 years old, standing up for civil rights, and then equal rights, and then gay rights. And every opportunity that's come around in my lifetime, anti-apartheid, I would participate and make sure that that conversation was respectful, but spoken, so that we can work together to make a better world. And that is, in my opinion, that is public service, in my opinion, is a duty, it's a responsibility, it's the highest honor, next to being a parent. I know that you guys know I love my kids, and boy, was I charmed when my son joined the call tonight and said what he said. It brought me to tears, honestly. But, you know, next to that great responsibility of being a parent, it's being a part of the community and being able to make a difference through public service. You guys know me. You've seen my work. You know how I campaign. You know how I serve on commissions. Cooperative and collaborative. I seek out people to have a voice, and the quietest person in the room is the one I call on to make sure that we are hearing them. And I have to tell you, campaigning has been an absolute blast. It's hard work, but I loved every minute of it. And I loved it because it gave me an opportunity to reach out to people in neighborhoods that I don't normally frequent, don't have a reason to get to every neighborhood. But this time I did, and I was able to hear what concerns people and how we can work together to make Hayward a great place. Thank you.
Thank you. So I started here, I started there. I think what I'm going to do next is I will start with Councilmember Marquez, and then we'll.
Thank you. Welcome. My question is in regard to the budget. So it's a very, very important question, decision you have to make as a council member. So there's a couple parts to this question. If you could tell me how big is the city's annual budget, what are the 3 biggest sources of revenue for the general fund, and whether or not you support the construction of a new police building, and if you do or do not, what are your ideas on how to raise money to construct that building?
Okay. As I answer, I may have to ask you to repeat some parts of it.
I know there's lots to it. Go ahead.
And sitting in the seat, you know, is a little jangling.
You could drink water.
Thank you. So my recollection is the budget's around $148 million. The 3 biggest sources of revenue are property tax, retail sales tax, and fees from services. The next question, part of that?
The police department, whether or not you support the need to construct a new police department, new building, and what are your thoughts to get the money to construct that building? How would we raise the funds?
You know, there's a lot of ways to raise the funds, and I'm not sure what's going to be the right path forward. So we'll have to explore that in some more detail. There should be some infrastructure budget, I'm hoping. We'll have to pursue that. It's a complicated question because if we take money from some buckets, then we may lose out on our staffing. It doesn't make sense to do that when we're already stretched. But yes, I do support having a new police building. I think we need it, partly because of the age of the current building, partly just for safety. But there's also something about working in a building that you feel environmentally supported. And that current building is not that. It's got some issues. And I've been through it. I've seen all parts of it, including the jail and meeting rooms and offices and stuff. And, you know, the best thing about it is the people in it. And it'll probably always be the people, but we definitely need a new building.
Thank you.
I'm going to go next to Councilmember Roach.
Thank you, Mayor. Welcome, Mr. Goldstein.
Thank you.
Excuse me, I don't know why I'm sort of losing my voice tonight, but forgive me. But my question is around sustainability and the environmental policy. Mm-hmm. Hayward's been a leader regionally and statewide on addressing climate change. What do you think Hayward has gotten right on environmental policy? And what's one thing we haven't done yet that you'd like to see Hayward move on?
Yeah, it's a really great question. So a few things that we've done right is by incorporating environmental issues into the general plan. And so by making that part of our public document and essentially the constitution of the city, I believe that continues to bring attention, and there are specific things that we've done, setting an example for, the library. really was a stellar thing that we've done. Making sure that developers in the low-lying areas are taking precautions, things like raising up where the foundation is actually positioned to accommodate the potential for low-lying flooding. All of those things I think are really good. I'm not sure where we've left off that we need to do more. I think we can do more in the area of transportation. I'd like to see BART actually be more accessible. I'd like to see more work done incorporating complete streets so that people are encouraged to ride their bikes and use their cars less. But there's a lot more that we can do along those lines, I think.
Thank you.
Councilmember Andrews. Or I apologize, Mayor Pro Tem Andrews.
Thank you for being here tonight. Many are calling on the reform of the California Environmental Quality Act. What do you see are the impacts of it on local development?
Yeah, that also is a great question. And the issue, the way that I see it, is sometimes CEQA is being used in an abusive way to force someone to adopt a position on a particular development that's not going in the direction of the party that is alleging wrongdoing relative to CEQA. And so at the state level, state legislatures are trying to figure out how to reduce that without, the thing that we don't want to give up is for people to have a voice and have a say and make sure that the right things get done. And you may have noticed there have been a couple of times in my service as planning commissioner where it became obvious that CEQA was being used as a lever for negotiations. And I was able to bring those negotiations to a conclusion that both parties were agreeable to. And I understand the state legislature is simply trying to codify how we are going to manage that so that CEQA doesn't become a hammer.
Thank you.
Councilmember Senmenyo.
Thank you for being here. What is public safety to you?
Well, I think at the very basic level, public safety provides a quality of life where that people feel safe to go about their business in the pursuit of happiness. And whether you're talking about young children walking through a neighborhood to get to their local school, or you're talking about the ability safely to go to your bank ATM, take out some money, or go on vacation for a couple of weeks and not come back to having your home burglarized. Those are all issues that really say a lot about the quality of life of a community. And if people are feeling harassed or threatened or, like school children walking to school, if they don't feel safe, then that could and does and sometimes preoccupy their minds rather than what the issue they should be focusing on, whether it's growing their business or studying or listening to the teacher. So to me, public safety is really very fundamental to people being able to pursue their happiness, their lives. It's very important.
Councilmember Syra.
Thank you. Good to see you tonight, Commissioner Goldstein.
Thank you.
Nearly half of Hayward residents are renters. Approximately a third are burdened by housing costs. Please describe your thoughts on the housing crisis in Hayward, the challenges it creates for our residents, and what you believe the city can do to address it.
Yeah, very good. So my father passed away when I was 19, and after my first year at Berkeley. And I became one of those people who was untethered from any kind of financial source. I did not want to take money from my mom. She was a middle-class working lady working for the post office, and I just did not want to do. I just didn't want to do that, and so I was on my own, and I worked my way through Berkeley, and I struggled to find housing even in those days, and that was, 80s, early 80s and so forth. And I was able to make it work. But, after that, and especially the job I had, of course, I was able to interact with the unsheltered, unhoused community. And was able to, ask them some questions, because not all of them are mentally ill and not all of them are hooked on drugs. There was one man in particular who came from a wealthy family, but he chose to live that way. And it was a really interesting discussion that he was able to do that willingly. And but at that particular moment in time, for me, that was a very difficult time to have housing. And I developed a sensitivity and a compassion for what it is to be a human being by watching people struggle. Some with mental issue, but others just trying to make ends meet. And I believe it is, as a public servant, and especially after talking to people through this election cycle, going door to door, making phone calls and talking to people about what's important to them, making sure that it is our job to find a way to make housing available. I don't think the two words housing affordability actually go together anymore. When the average price of a home in Hayward is $1 million, I just don't see people being able to afford that. But there are other structures that we can use by making adjustments in our banking, by making adjustments in how we do transfer payments, meaning improving people's buying power through means other than raising wages or raising taxes to pay for things. And I think we need to find some solutions to keep Hayward residents in Hayward, give them an opportunity. And one of the ways I think we can do that is by using our education system. And as a treasurer and board member for Hayward Education Foundation, I've signed checks for, in partnership with HEF for over $80,000 towards getting people the education that they need, as well as through Rotary, giving grants to young kids to go on to college. And I think we can do more of that, so making education available and also training for entrepreneurship. And I've been, for 33 plus years, I've been building high-tech startups, and I plan to continue doing that through the entrepreneurship programs here in Hayward to make it possible for people to succeed economically and build multi-generational wealth.
Thank you.
What do you think is the central concern in downtown merchants, with downtown merchants?
With downtown merchants? Mm-hmm. So while I was campaigning, most of the business owners in that area really complained about two things. The first thing that came to mind was the homeless situation. And excuse me, it's not that they don't have a heart for the homeless. They recognize that there's a problem there, but it has an impact on their business. And they want to be successful business people. The realtors, the commercial realtors, and others that have properties or want to bring new businesses here are concerned that people who buy stuff are intimidated or otherwise affected by the presence of homeless, and also by people who are doing drugs. So they're not supposed to be smoking pot out in public down there, but they do, and that's a turnoff. So that was the number one thing that people really wanted to talk about. And the second thing was, forgive me for bringing it up, the loop. So there is concern, of course, just to reiterate for anyone online who maybe doesn't know, but the volume of traffic, which we addressed, I say we as a city, but City Council made the decision to invest dollars to help traffic go by speedily, and that seems to be working. But the business owners want some way for people who want to enjoy the businesses downtown to be able to do that without feeling intimidated by the speed of the traffic that's zipping around the downtown area.
Thank you. That concludes our part. Now we move to your closing, 2-minute closing statement.
Thank you. And I'm trying to be brief. I noticed I'm not being very brief, but I'm trying. And so forgive me for that. Listen, in my 7 years as a planning commissioner, I have really thoroughly enjoyed being part of the government process. I've thoroughly enjoyed meeting each and every one of you and working with you. I think you know that I'm very collaborative in how I do things. I think I would make a great partner in doing what we need to have done. And the insights that I bring in business finance, entrepreneurship, I think will help us not only with our school and education system, but I think it will also help raise tax revenue, not by raising taxes, but by doing what we do best as a community, which is building businesses that are successful. And I would love to be working with you, shoulder to shoulder, working together to make great things happen in Hayward.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And now, if you're done, you can proceed to sit down.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
And Madam City Clerk, the council would like to take a 5-minute break. And so if you can tell the candidates in the back, yeah. So.
Will do. Thank you.
Okay, if I can have council return to the dais, please. Can I get council back to the dais, please? Okay. Good evening. You have a 3-minute opening statement. Then we will have questions. And then after we have our questions, then you'll have 2 minutes to conclude. And then after you conclude, then you'll retire to the chairs, and then we'll bring out the next candidate.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to interview
You want to turn on your microphone.
There we go. There, I like that. Wonderful. Well, again, I appreciate the opportunity to interview in front of all of you this evening. As you know, my name is Aiden Ali Sullivan. It's a great privilege to be interviewing for this opening on the City Council. Obviously, this is a very unique opportunity, and that is not lost on me. And I would argue that that uniqueness befits a unique voice on council, which I believe I can be. While I know you're familiar with my work on the Planning Commission, many of you may not be as fully familiar with my personal background. I am a Bay Area native, been a resident of Hayward for the past 24 years, aside from a few breaks for some work overseas and graduate school. I grew up next door in Fremont, and as a high school senior, I was selected to serve as a student board member on the Board of Education. Since that first foray into public service, over the last 23 years, I've continually sought opportunities to both in the personal and professional arenas to give back to my community. So what drives this passion? Really, for me, it's personal. As a mixed race Muslim American, I learned early on at a young age that policy decisions affecting me were made by individuals that looked nothing like me. And it was really this desire to represent that changing face of America and American political institutions that led me to pursue my political science undergraduate degrees, to work in Sacramento in the state legislature, to pursue a master's in public policy, spent 5 years as a political officer for the Department of Foreign Affairs, and now work within the transportation policy space. Hayward is an extremely diverse city. That's not something I need to tell you all. And I believe that I represent many underrepresented constituencies within this city. I believe that public service is a noble calling, and that one should give their time, their energy, their intelligence to uplift the community. And it's this personal desire that grounds my belief in the power and importance of public service. I also recognize that this is an inflection point for Hayward, going forward with the majority of council at this point being new, and it presents an opportunity for bold leadership, for bold decisions to help move the city forward, and I would relish the opportunity to be part of that with you as a council colleague.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, last time I started here out today, or this time, I'm going to start with our Madam Mayor Pro Tem Andrews.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you for being here this evening. Many are calling on the reform of the California Environmental Quality Act, and what do you see are the impacts of it on local development?
Pardon me, just to repeat, you're speaking on the potential reform of CEQA?
Yes.
And what are the impacts of it on planning in the cities?
And how do you see the impact of CEQA to local development?
Sure. I mean, I see it, I won't say every day, but I see it in projects that come to the Planning Commission, right? Projects that have the potential to impact obviously the environment, the built environment, and the process that CEQA, put it this way, I think there are well intentions behind CEQA. I think the actual sort of impacts of it can be detrimental to development from a timing perspective and from a process perspective. It can also be used, dare I say, maliciously by constituencies, by interest to try and stop projects or to significantly slow them down. And so if the desire is to pursue development in as responsible a manner as possible, then CEQA is a potential tool that folks can use to reduce the potential impacts or to reduce your ability to grow developments. As far as reforming it, I think there's an important it plays an important part in ensuring that responsible and appropriate developments move forward, right? I don't think that anyone would question whether or not CEQA should exist. And it's something that I think protects our environment. With that said, I think if one were to reform it, I think the reform would likely be looking at the implementation and actions that one individual or parties could take under CEQA and streamlining timelines or streamlining processes or streamlining any type of appeals that one could make under CEQA.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Zedmenu.
Thank you for being here. What is public safety to you?
Great question. I think about my neighborhood. I moved into a community close to the South Hayward BART station, a lot of new Hayward residents, right? Folks that hadn't lived here before. And I think they had, folks moving to the community, first-time home buyers, first-time renters. It's both rental and homeowners in my neighborhood in the community, but new to Hayward, have certain expectations. And what we've seen over the last couple of years, particularly in the South Hayward neighborhood and in my neighborhood, is a lot of petty crime. And it's led folks in my neighborhood to really question, is Hayward safe? Is the police department doing what it needs to be doing? Are our public leaders doing what they need to be doing to protect our interests? And I think a large part of this is a overreaction by some folks. A large part of it is folks not really having an understanding of what happens in a variety of neighborhoods in the Bay Area that's not unique to Hayward. Folks that have that are new to the area, and so they question whether or not the city is safe. I think how I would classify public safety is being able to walk outside, to go for a walk with my family, with my wife, to not have my car broken into, to not have my packages stolen on my front porch. Those are all things that I think we as community members expect and should have in our community. Now, what does that mean? How does one achieve that? I don't think it's simply through policing. I think policing is a component of public safety, but I think there's also other components of public safety, including community engagement. There's a component for schools. There's a component for neighborhood watches. It's a multifaceted approach, I think, to ensuring that the communities we live in are safe. That, to me, I think is really what we should aspire to. Are we ever going to have a perfect community? Humans are fallible, right? I don't expect that, nothing will ever happen anytime, anywhere in the city of Hayward. But I do expect, and I do think, and one of the things that I would like to focus on if I was given the opportunity to be a council member, is addressing some of the public safety concerns that I'm hearing from my neighbors, that I see myself, and that I know that folks have already talked about tonight, and that I know that's something that all 6 of you are looking to address.
Thank you, Councilmember Syra.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Commissioner Ali Sullivan, for being here tonight. Nearly half of Hayward residents are renters. Approximately a third of Hayward residents are burdened by housing costs. Please describe your thoughts on the housing crisis in Hayward, the challenges that it creates for our residents, and what you believe the city can do to address it.
So first off, I'll state that the housing challenge that we are facing in Hayward is not unique to our city. It's not unique to the East Bay. This is something that is a problem for California. It's something that's a problem for major metropolitan areas throughout the country. So it's not anything that Hayward is necessarily doing wrong. It's something that we have the potential to perhaps impact, but it's not, I don't think the solution to the housing crisis that Hayward is facing is something that the 6 of you and a 7th member can solve. I think it's a problem that needs to be addressed. Well, there are policy concerns, and then there's also larger structural concerns at play within society that are creating the housing crisis. Assuming that we can't address some of those much larger structural inequalities at play in a capitalist society, what can we do at the local level and at the state level? I think a couple things. So we on the Planning Commission recently reviewed the affordable housing ordinance, looking at what the caps on or limits on affordable housing can and should be for the city, and looking at how far we can push those. I think that's one way that that we as a city can work to address this. The second piece of it would be to work at development of additional housing projects, opening up that the how would I phrase it? I think when you look at, for example, the parcel groups, the large parcels of land that we have, those are unique opportunities to address housing. It's difficult to address it on a one-off or singular basis or small areas, but as you look at, for example, the Mission Boulevard corridor and the work that's been done in that area around affordable housing and high-density housing, I think that's one way that the city can look to address it. The other is, as I mentioned, continuing to pursue affordable housing through the ordinance that we have in place, and to push for in lieu versus fees for affordable housing. That's what I would look to do. It's not lost on me, the concerns around rentals. I rented after college. I just recently was able to purchase a condo here in Hayward. Hayward was the only part of the Bay Area that was still, again, dare I say, affordable, and that's in the context of the Bay Area, and I think that's something that makes our city unique, and it's something that we need to protect, that affordability in relation to the pressures that we face from cities in the south and north of us as well.
Thank you.
What do you think is the, in your opinion, what do you believe to be the central concern of downtown merchants?
The central concern of downtown merchants. Well, I'm not myself a downtown merchant, as you know, and so I can't necessarily speak for them, but as someone who used to work downtown at a merchant, my first job was working at an aquarium store right downtown. I go through downtown, I drive through it, I do some shopping downtown, but I also recognize what it lacks and what's missing from it. If I were a downtown business owner, I think I'd have a variety of concerns. One being, if I were to just sort of spitball some here, so public safety, lighting, infrastructure, the health and buildable quality of the rental units available. What is the, what class are they? My take would be that we don't have the best stock of physical buildings and physical property downtown. And I think that is a constraining factor on the growth of our downtown area. Additionally, I think public safety is a concern that folks have, right? Do I feel safe to come downtown, when it's dark at 5 o'clock? Can I find easy parking? Are the streets and sidewalks well lit? Is it creating a safe, natural, welcoming environment? I think the environmental factors are probably the largest concern and most immediate concern that business owners would have. Secondary to that, I think, would be the infrastructure, right? Infrastructure can't be solved as easily. I think some of the public safety concerns and environmental concerns could be solved in an easier manner. That, to me, though, and from a priority standpoint, I do think that downtown Hayward has massive potential. And I look at cities on the peninsula, and I'll go to cities along the peninsula, and you'll see their downtown corridors, you'll see the restaurants, you'll see the bars, you'll see the nightlife, you'll see interesting shops. It creates a desire for folks to come. I don't think we have that downtown right now, but I think we have a ton of potential, right? We have the population. We have could be a gorgeous downtown. It looks great right now, but I think there are things that you could do to make it look even better. We have ample parking. We have a great brand new library. We have a beautiful city hall. We have plazas with great landscaping. So there's a ton of potential. I think it's just attracting the right mix of business owners to downtown. And that's what, one of the things that I would really like to focus on were I selected to be on council with you.
Thank you. That concludes our portion, but
I think.
Mayor Salinas?
Oh, I apologize. No, that does not conclude our portion.
Keep them coming.
We
Keep
still
them
have
coming.
2 more council members. Councilmember
Sure.
Marquez. My apologies.
No worries. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for being here. My question is related to the budget, knowing that it's one of the most important decisions you'll make as a council member. There's a couple parts to this question. How big is the city's annual budget? What are the 3 biggest sources of revenue to the general fund? And what are your views with respect to the need for a new police department? And what are your thoughts on how we will raise the revenue to construct that building?
Pardon me, can you say?
And not department, I meant building, actual police building, sorry. And your ideas on how we would raise revenue to construct a brand new building.
Got it. So I'll be brutally honest. I don't know the budget number off the top of my head. I have reviewed it previously. I believe the 3 largest components or inputs to the budget are taxation, so property tax, sales tax, and I believe it's fees or use taxes. So those, I believe, are the 3 largest inputs that we're receiving. Police being one of the largest expenditures, obviously, of the budget. With respect to a new police building, what's the best way to handle that? I think there are 2 ways you could do it. The first being go to the voters, right? Try and pursue a bond measure and say, look, voters, we need a new police building. We need a facility. It's going to cost, $100 million, and see if the voters are willing to support a bond measure. That's one option. The palatability of that, not sure. Obviously, it's going to increase your property tax, so I'm not sure how folks would feel about it, but I think that would be sort of a great litmus test to see, look, does the community support this? Are you literally willing to put your money behind this? Do you feel that this is a priority? The other option would be to, somehow reallocate funds within the existing city budget. I don't know if that would be possible. I haven't looked at the details of the budget. Likely a very difficult thing to do. I can't imagine that would be easy. I guess the third option would be to look for external funding coming from either county sources or state sources. There might be opportunities there as well. But as a council member, that's something that I would certainly look into. I think based on some of the experience I've had working in state government and the connections I have there, I'd be able to tap into those. I'm not saying that anything is even possible, but I think it's certainly an avenue that one would want to look through and to run down to see if there's an opportunity there. Okay. I apologize, I don't know the budget figure. I should know that number. I would be lying to you if I said I did.
It's okay, thank you.
And of course, Councilmember Roach.
Thank you, Mayor. Welcome, Mr. Ali Sullivan.
Thank you.
My question is around sustainability and the environment. Hayward's been a leader regionally and statewide in addressing climate change. What do you think Hayward's gotten right in environmental policy? And what's one thing we haven't done yet that you'd like to move forward?
That's a good question. What have we done right? Well, I think a lot of the environmental and sustainability impacts that you see at the municipal level are state-driven. And so I think there's an important role for the state to play as it relates to ensuring that development and buildings are being done in a sustainable manner. From a city standpoint, so it's a good question, and I'll be honest. I can't put my finger on one particular thing that the city has done from a sustainability standpoint that I would mark as the thing or being emblematic of a great program for us. Yeah.
What about something that you'd like to see Hayward do in the environmental policy?
Yeah, I think there's opportunity, as I mentioned, in relation to some of the state laws. I think there's opportunity to go above and beyond what some of those mandates are. One of the things I think about, for example, is, and it's come up on projects that we've seen, is around EV charging and around solar panels. Two things I'm thinking off the top of my head. My house has 6 solar panels that came with it. That was mandated by the state as a new build. I'd love if it had 12 or 14. It's not enough, and there's space on the roof to put more panels. At the same time, from a EV charging standpoint, we've seen this with projects on the Planning Commission. The reach goals that we have as a city, I think we can go even further with those. When you look at projects with massive parking lots, every spot should be plumbed for and or ready for electric vehicle charging. It's something that's going to come. It's something that we're seeing that transition happen quickly. I'd love to see us as a city look to be supportive and additive to the requirements around, for example, electric vehicle charging as one piece of that sustainability puzzle.
Thank you.
Okay, now that concludes our portion. I'd like to give you 2 minutes to provide a concluding statement.
Sure. Thank you. I will try and be even briefer than that. Once again, I wanted to thank the 6 of you for the opportunity tonight. It really is an honor to have your confidence, your trust to be interviewed for this position. So thank you all. I recognize that I might be a bit of a dark horse here. You have 5 candidates. It includes 2 of my colleagues who serve with me on the Planning Commission, both of whom I feel are just as qualified, just as prepared to step into this role based on their record of giving back to the city of Hayward. I have the highest professional respect for them based on the work over the last 2 years, and I think they would make wonderful city council members. While I might not have the same depth of connections in the community or years of experience serving Hayward as some other applicants have, I would argue, though, that my professional background, as well as my demonstrated commitment to public service over the course of the last 20 years or so, is the requisite qualification for this position. I am very passionate about seeing the city thrive. I'm excited with the potential that this new council has to shape our community. I'm quite confident I can find common ground with all of you. I've worked with and interacted with almost all of you, and I'm confident that being your colleague, I can continue to further support our shared goals for Hayward. So I would respectfully ask for your vote and would appreciate the opportunity to serve as a council member with the 6 of you. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'm sure your parents are very proud. And his wife, yes, of course. Madam City Clerk, you can bring out the last candidate. Thank you. I tried to have music, interlude music, but they said no, Mr. Bonilla. They said no. So welcome, and thank you for being here. We have, we're gonna have a 3-minute introduction, and then we will ask questions, and then you'll have a 2-minute conclusion, and then since you're the last candidate, you'll go sit down, but since you're the last candidate, then from there we will proceed with our proceedings here. But you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, City Council, staff, and members of the public. My name is Ray Bonilla, and it is certainly an honor and privilege to be with you tonight. All of the candidates before you have very strong qualifications, but I am here to share why I'm the best candidate to serve Hayward. I was born, raised, and have lived in Hayward my entire life. As a lifelong member of this community, I have a deep understanding and an informed set of perspectives on the issues that we face. I am a product of Hayward schools. As you heard, I graduated from Harder Elementary, Cesar Chavez Middle School, Tennyson High School, Chabot College, and Cal State Hayward. I believe in the power of education as the great equalizer, and I support the mayor's vision of making Hayward an education city. My passion for this community started over 20 years ago. In fact, it started at the Weeks Branch Library when I was hired as a library page. That's where I really started to see firsthand needs of our community and folks that were in my neighborhood and that I went to school with. So when I was at Tennyson and I was asked by our principal to join the Hayward Youth Commission, or at least to apply to represent an underserved community that hadn't been represented on the Youth Commission for quite some time, I was very happy to put in my application, and I was appointed by City Council. In that capacity, within 1 year of serving on that commission, I was voted in to be the first chair of the Youth Commission, bringing structure and organization to the work that we were doing. That's when I had my first opportunity as well to partner with the city, the school district, and HARD to deal with issues that were impacting our youth. I've served since then on the Community Services Commission, the Citizens Advisory Commission prior to that, and I've completed over 5 years of service on the Planning Commission, each time rising to the position of chair, because my peers and colleagues knew that they can count on me to show up, to be active, and to be a leader. I share this because I want to demonstrate my depth of understanding, my proven experience, and my passion for serving Hayward. Service to my community is a personal value of mine, and I have a track record that demonstrates that. My commitment to serving our community includes advancing housing for all with an eye towards affordable housing, strengthening public safety, and growing our local economy, while centering equity and our most marginalized community members in our actions and decisions. I will bring to this position experience in all of these areas. I will also bring a commitment to collaborate to envision workable, equity-centric approaches to solving these complex issues. I am here to continue my service in this community, a community that I have called home my entire life. I am highly collaborative, and I know we can work well together to move Hayward forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I think I've started on every direction of the council, so I will start and then I'll move to my left. What do you think is the central concern for downtown merchants today?
I think the central concern for downtown merchants is perhaps the blight that we see in downtown Hayward and the businesses that we see that are not activated. I think downtown Hayward has a great potential, and especially as I was reviewing the downtown specific plan and to see how Hayward is going to be, or downtown more particularly, where our vision is to make that the core part of our city and to make it walkable and to have a balance of housing and office spaces and restaurants and retail. And I think that's what we need to activate downtown Hayward. We need to follow the plan that our community has put in place, that there was a lot of participation in gaining. And I think we'll be able to attract more merchants to downtown. I think, there's certainly the carrot, which is, how do we incentivize more merchants to come to downtown, to activate it through incentives like perhaps white glove service from the Economic Development Department, sharing more about what the city does have to offer. But then I also think that there's a bit of a stick we can use. Like for an example, a vacancy tax that we should, potentially consider imposing so that if our merchants aren't activating it through the support that we're providing them, perhaps there's a different way of incentivizing them to activate Hayward and in particular downtown. And it's really ripe for that. When you think about Maple and Main and Lincoln Landing and all of the housing that we're going to be building in downtown Hayward and the people that are going to be coming there, spending time to really market what we have to offer and the competitive advantage of coming to Hayward, I think is one way that we could activate downtown Hayward and how we can bring more merchants into that fold.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Andrews.
Thank you, and thank you for being here this evening. Many are calling on the reform of the California Environmental Quality Act. What do you see as impacts to local development?
Thank you for that question. I see it as a way of potentially slowing down development in our community. And I think that there might be other ways of understanding environmental impacts, which is very, very important to our projects, without perhaps such a lengthy process that we have in place today. I think that, it's expensive, the information is needed, but there might be other ways of understanding what the environmental impact is of projects and helping reduce that project cost and some of the time that the projects have to spend getting those environmental reports and analysis done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Council members, Edmund.
Thank you for being here. What is public safety to you?
Public safety to me is really a community-centered approach in which police, fire, our community, our neighbors, public works, public health, we're all working together to build a community that's able to quickly rebound when we're faced with adversity. When I think about public safety, I think about community resilience, and I think about our ability to be strong in the face of any type of event that we may have to deal with. In fact, public safety is a bit of my background. I hadn't shared this before, but I was a police explorer in the city of Hayward for quite a while as I was exploring potentially the police department. But in my professional career, I have the pleasure of leading very large-scale crisis responses, and I did that for Kaiser Permanente. And we partnered with public safety, with law enforcement, with public health, to really center our approach around public safety through the lens of what's meaningful to our community members. So it's funny because I lived in neighborhoods in which folks may have assumed were unsafe, but I felt the safest living there because I knew my neighbors had our back. I knew that there was cohesion and connection in the neighborhood, and there was some sort of dynamic network that was developed to take care of everybody. Whether it was getting your neighbor rice or helping your neighbor navigate the library system because their library card had a fine and got deactivated. So as I think about public safety, I really think about it in a broad way in which everyone in the community can feel safe and thrive in both play and at work here.
Councilmember Sarah.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Commissioner Bonilla. My question is, nearly half of Hayward residents are renters, approximately a third are burdened by housing costs. Please describe your thoughts on the housing crisis in Hayward, the challenges it's creating for residents, and what you believe the city can do to address it.
Thank you for that question, George. I couldn't agree more with you. With 50% of our community being renters, we have to make sure that we're putting in place ordinances and things that are going to help them be stable and remain in this community. When you look at the median price of a house in Hayward, it's over $1 million. When you look at the median income, it's $91,000. So a lot of people in Hayward are not necessarily going to be able to jump straight to home ownership, which is why it's so important to make sure that we're protecting the renters in our community through things like the rent stabilization ordinance that we currently have. I think it's a great ordinance. I would like to see it perhaps updated a bit. I know it's for developments that are 1979 and prior. That leaves 40 years of housing that's been built that's not necessarily under this policy of rent stabilization. So I do see the importance of making sure that we have policies in place that are protecting our renters. I think it's really a dynamic conversation that we need to be having because there's no silver bullet for it. But community conversation with the property owners and with the community to really come up with the best set of solutions to make sure that we are protecting what I see as some of our most vulnerable parts of the community. With rent prices increasing as quickly as they are, wages are outpacing. Rent increases are outpacing wages, which is probably what's contributing to the homelessness crisis that we have, because we don't have those protections in place to keep people housed as we see, rents skyrocket within this area. So, I'm very much for things, up to and including exploring, rent control in the city as well. I think that we're right for it. I think we're on the verge of transformation with all of the housing we're bringing online. And I do have to commend the city for the work that they've done to make sure that we're addressing our affordable housing obligations and the developments that we're building, both in terms of rental and home ownership. But I do agree that there's more that we can do in the rental space.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Marquez.
Thank you, Commissioner Bonilla, for joining us tonight. My question is going to be related to the budget. It's one of the most important decisions you'll make as a council member. There's a couple parts to this question. The first part is, how big is the city's annual budget? What are the 3 biggest sources of revenue? And what are your ideas about the need for a new police building? And your thoughts on how we would raise the revenue to construct such a new building?
Thank you for those questions. let me see if I remember them all. You might have to repeat them. But the first one was, what is the city's budget? Was that the right? The city's budget is about $400 million. And although that may seem like a lot, considering the services that are being provided in Hayward and the quality of those services, it's very impressive that we're able to do that on that budget. I know that budget is split between a general fund and an enterprise fund, where the majority, or over 50% of that $400,000 typically comes from the general fund. However, because of some ARPA relief funds that we've recently gotten, I know that other funds might be a little bit more inflated today. Your next question, I'm sorry?
The 3 top revenue sources.
The 3 top revenue sources. I know one of them is coming through enterprise funds. I know that we have some measures in place. For an example, we have Measure D that we have, and it's a bond measure that's around, I believe, utility tax, and we're getting nearly $16 million a year from that. We have Measure C that we're also getting about $15 million from, which is the half-cent sales tax increase. I know that it's not a lot, but we also still have an activated Measure NN, which is our transit occupancy tax, which is about $3 million a year. And I do appreciate us being judicious in, activating or, bringing that online, because I know that the hoteliers are having some issues right now. But those are, and then, property tax is also another major revenue source for the city, as I understand it.
And then the need for a new police building and your thoughts on how we would raise revenue to construct that building.
That's a great question as well. So I believe the new police building is somewhere in the ballpark of like $500 million, probably $500,000 if the numbers are coming back correctly. A little bit lower. More, oh, okay, I thought it was about, okay. So at any rate, I do believe that we need to have a new police building. The police department is exactly the way it was 30 years ago, or 25 years ago when I was in there as an explorer. I think the police department and the police department facilities could also directly contribute to, retention of police officers. They want nice facilities to work in, which then can lower the cost of this, the attrition that we see in our police force. The way of going about raising that money, the easy answer is to say, let's go for a bond measure, right? The harder question is, we keep going and taxing people in Hayward for so many different things, right? We just passed another half-cent sales tax at the county level for Measure W around affordable housing. So I know the easy answer is to say, not the easy answer, but the most obvious answer is to say, let's go to the voters. I think we need to have hard conversations around our budget and around CIP and around other infrastructure things that we're funding, and seeing how we might be able to potentially phase in some sort of, funding approach similar to what we're doing for the stack in downtown Hayward. In South Hayward. I know we don't have all of those funds fully determined yet, but I know that there's a phased approach to figuring that out. So number one, I am in full support of the police department getting a rebuilt facility. I'm also in full support of us building a communications center that, removes communications, just from the police department, but makes it more of kind of a general service that people can call not only for emergencies, but non-emergency services as well. I'm in support of both of those. And I'm also very happy about our new fire station and training station that's being built.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Roach.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for being here, Mr. Bonilla. My question is around sustainability and the environment. Hayward's been a leader regionally and statewide on addressing climate change and environmental policy. What do you think Hayward has gotten right on environmental policy, and what's one thing we haven't done yet that you'd like to see us move forward on?
Great question. I think Hayward's doing a lot of things right in environmental policy. As you said, we're a leader in a lot of areas. The work that we're doing to make sure that, the library, for an example, being a lead, facility is quite fantastic. The work that we're doing to make our fleet more electric, I think, is a great thing. The work that we're doing around the coastal shoreline and, looking at coastal inundation and the impact that that brings to communities around the shoreline with the Shoreline Master Plan, I think, is some things that we're doing right. When you look at the general plan, we have community resilience in there and disaster preparedness, which are responses to climate change and environmental justice issues. I think what we can do a little bit more is really double down on our commitment to be a green city. One of the things that I did on the Planning Commission that wasn't necessarily the most popular, but I take accountability for it, which is I did not vote in favor of the Costco gas station that came onto A Street. And the reason that I didn't do that is because I didn't think that it conformed with the city's priorities. priorities of having a clean, green city and having our, our corridors be active transportation routes that, people are walking and biking. So for that reason, I didn't support the project. And I think that if we double down on our commitment to not bring large-scale gas stations in here and to start looking at ways that we do make downtown more green and more walkable, we'll continue to be able to contribute to making the city continue to be a leader in the environmental justice reform.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So that concludes our portion. And now you have 2 minutes to summarize and give us your concluding remarks. And you're the last speaker tonight.
I'll be brief. Thank you for interviewing me tonight. I hope that I've been able to demonstrate my commitment along with my deep passion, understanding, and experience serving this community, which is ultimately what led me here tonight. I am proud of where Hayward is today. I feel like I've been a part of it for the last 35 years. And I'm excited about where Hayward can go. I can bring a community-centered, highly collaborative, committed, informed, and balanced approach to move Hayward forward. I am a systems thinker, inclusive and collaborative. I know that it takes all of us working together to achieve change and to solve the issues that are confronting our community. I have a broad set of experience to bring to this position and a track record of collaboratively partnering with communities, nonprofit organizations, governments, and businesses to make meaningful contributions on significant issues. As a committed public servant, I also have experience working regionally that I can bring to the dais. As you heard, I've worked with ABAG and wrote some policy around disaster risk reduction that was adopted across many cities in the county. I have a deep experience dealing with housing issues across our community. I've served on the leadership board of Everyone Home for over 4 years. That's a collective impact organization across the county that's working to bring all of our government partners, nonprofit providers, people with lived experience, and community members together to make sure that we're heading strategically in the same direction to solve for and end homelessness in our county. I was very impressed to see Hayward create their Home Everyone plan, or getting Hayward House plan, that really does align with the work that I've done at the county. During my service, my contributions have been centered in equity and making sure that the homeless response system has the appropriate funding, policies, and collaborating with local governments. I've also managed large-scale crisis events that I think will be useful in navigating large-scale and complex issues in the city. I am confidently committed to the responsibilities and the workload of a member of City Council. I know it's a lot. I've seen the committees that we're going to be on, but I have the full support of my family and my community, my work community as well. I'm committed to doing whatever it takes to get the job done.
Mr. Bonilla, I apologize.
And
but I have to stop.
I thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you. And
Thank
you may sit down now. And I guess this is where our work begins, right, Madam City Clerk? Okay. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to go around through council and make nominations. I'm going to ask each council member for their nomination, and then we will proceed and vote. If we, each council member will vote affirmatively, or they'll say abstain. And then if we don't get a unanimous or a four council members to vote in the affirmative, we'll do it again. And I promise this will not be like we saw last week, but I think you'll see, this is how it works, and this is the process that we're going to follow. Before I start the process, I wanted to formally thank all of the candidates for speaking today and presenting before us today. Clearly, all of you are competent, proficient in the way the city works, and I think, if you are unsuccessful today, I absolutely believe that you would make great candidates in the future. And so I just really want to encourage you to think about that. And, like I said earlier, at the end of the day, tomorrow we're going to have to work together again. And I really appreciated, just my last comment, I really appreciated just the collegiality of everybody that presented, from the very first person, Ms. Berry, to the very last person, Mr. Bonilla. Just your level of professionalism and collegiality is precisely what we're looking for. So thank you very much. And so we may begin. Correct, Madam City Clerk? Okay.
Yes, Mayor, I believe you want to call for someone to...
Yeah. So I am going to take chair prerogative, and I'm going to kick this off with a first nomination. And
I'm sorry, my apologies,
Yes.
Mayor Salinas. So you are starting the nomination period, right?
yeah, so we need to open the nomination
Yes,
period.
correct.
So we need to open up the nomination period. So I formally close the interview process, and I formally open the nomination process. And if I could have a council member make a motion to open up the nomination process, that'd be great.
I'll move to open the nomination process.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Marquez, seconded by Councilmember Syrup. And if we could have a roll call.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Andrews? Aye. Councilmember Marquez?
Aye.
Councilmember Roche?
Aye.
Councilmember Syrup?
Yes.
Councilmember Cermeño?
Sí.
Mayor Salinas?
Yes.
Thank you.
So we have unanimously passed to open up nomination process. And then, and if I remember the rules, after the first round of nominations, we don't need a second. We can move straight to. No, we do need a second.
So you would now call for nominations,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
then
okay,
you'll
I
need
get
to close the nomination
Yeah,
period.
Okay. So now what I'd like to do is I'd like to nominate Dan Goldstein for the City Council. First of all, this is this is probably the most serious decision that I think the six of us up here are going to be making, at least for the next 2 years. And we've read all of the resumes, and I think we've listened to all of the testimony and to the interview questions and the responses. But there are some things that I just want to highlight. And I also want to just mention that, for me at least, I mean, I was literally splitting hairs up here. And I think every single one of you are incredibly qualified to be up here. But there are some differentiating things that I want to just highlight. One, Mr. Goldstein has just come off a very rigorous campaign. And, campaigning is a very difficult task. It's a very difficult process. It is not an easy process to come from to campaign for a city council seat. And he has been thoroughly vetted by regional stakeholders, local stakeholders. He has been vetted by a lot of different local groups, neighborhood groups, and he has just met and has put the time in and met with all of the different groups all throughout the city. Another point that I want to make here is, campaigning is a very lonely pursuit. And part of that solitude in pursuing a public office is going door to door, knocking, and standing on the doorstep of a constituent, of somebody who you're going to be representing, and making the case. There is something to be said about that. And I know every single one of us up here have knocked on doors and have stood on that doorstep. And when I say be in a very lonely place, in a very solitude place, because when you're standing at that door, talking to somebody who you have never talked to before, or have never seen before, and you really sit and listen, or stand and listen to the good news, the bad news, the ugly news, and I think that that's a test, I think, that all candidates pursuing a chair up here, I think, need to experience. And so I think for those reasons, I'm going to first support and nominate Dan Goldstein. And then I'd like to now move over to Councilmember Roach.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. Ms. Berry, I really appreciate your comments about your social work in the community, your social justice work in the community. Mr. Bruckner, thank you for being so revealing in your opening, I think, as a way of highlighting why representation matters on the dais. Mr. Bonilla, thank you for your strong answers in your interview, and just appreciate you being here tonight. And Mr. Goldstein, we've gotten to know each other during the campaign, and I appreciate your good work in the community as well. So, and the other thing I wanted to say while I have the mic is to the 45 candidates that were selected and the 40 that didn't get a hearing today, I just would really encourage you to go to our website, look at the commissions and task force. It's just a great way to get involved, to continue your interest in the community, that the issues that you want to put forward. There's several that are of interest. And while it looks like it might be a funnel, it's just a simple way of getting involved and how we all got to know each other. I mean, I certainly sit here because of my experience on commissions and the collaborative work that I did with all of you, actually, but most of you. And so I really encourage you to go that route and to look into the commissions if you are not selected this evening. So I highly recommend that. So with that said, I land on two different people. Mr. Goldstein and Mr. Bonilla, I think, have, just the level, the depth of their work in the community in Hayward is really sort of helps them rise to the top, in my opinion, of the 5 candidates that are here tonight. And I think while I totally agree that Mr. Goldstein has done the hard work on the campaign and he's really gotten to know the community. Mr. Bonilla, as far as this evening goes, Mr. Bonilla's interview really sort of was outstanding, and I think he had answers to questions that we were all looking for tonight. And I mean, obviously the depth of his knowledge in the city was really outstanding, and I appreciate the obvious work that you did to prepare tonight. And I think if it's any indication of how you would be on the dais, that I think we'd all be the better for it. And so while I sit here sort of weighing two options, because Mr. Goldstein has already received a nomination, my nomination goes to Mr. Bonilla. Thank you.
Councilmember Marquez.
Thank you, Mayor. I also want to thank everyone that applied for this vacancy and those that were interviewed tonight. It was obvious that you all prepared for this opportunity, so I want to thank you for your service and your commitment, and echo the same comments as Councilmember Roche, that there is a lot of room on boards and commissions. Also, our nonprofits need a lot of help in the community. There's also opportunities to serve on those bodies as advisory or as a board member. So just encourage everyone to continue to stay engaged. And I will also say that I was really impressed with the lead up. There was a lot of work that went into, I think there's a packet somewhere, it's published on our website, but there were many emails and support of letters of recommendation for the candidates tonight. So thank you to the community who outreached to us. I am conflicted with this vote, being a lifelong Hayward resident. I really, truly admire the love, the passion, the respect that Commissioner Bonilla has. I think it's amazing to hear his start on the Youth Commission, go back and get educated, and then then return to Hayward and continue to serve. I think you would be an amazing council member, and look forward to serving with you, if not tonight, sometime in the future. Mr. Goldstein, I've met with you. I know you very well. I know your work on the Planning Commission. I know your work on updating the general plan, and I just truly admire your resilience. You weren't successful in the election process, but you continued to stay focused. I feel like your commitment to the city of Hayward has never wavered. And if anyone looks at our committee assignments, I think we're all averaging about 6 to 8 up here. There's a lot of work to be done. It's not just the Tuesday meetings. So what I'm looking for is someone that can hit the ground running, and I do feel that that's Mr. Dan Goldstein. Thank you.
Councilmember Mayor Pro Tem Andrews.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you all for being here tonight. I know this is not an easy feat to interview in front of the public and be here on the dais and give answers. And I just want to commend you all for taking the time to submit an application, reach out to your network, and activate your network, and be here tonight and study for all these really complicated issues that we're not going to solve overnight, but we appreciate your thought process around those really complicated issues. I'm also torn. I feel that all of you did well tonight, and I just want to commend every single one of you. Chair Berry, I commend your work on the Community Services Commission and bring in a social justice aspect to this evening, and really putting that as, the forefront of what you bring. Commissioner Bruckner, I really appreciate your advocacy for the LGBTQIA+ community. I definitely always see your passion, and anytime I see you, and I stand in solidarity with your community, and really look forward to working with you on how we can make sure that community feels safe and protected here in Hayward. Mr. Goldstein, I have worked with you on the Planning Commission, and I know you, every single time there was an issue that also spoke to social justice, you recognized your privilege, and I just want to acknowledge you for that. And I always appreciate what you bring to the dais, because you do bring a sense of practicality, but also knowing that there needs to be change made, and every planning issue is a social justice issue, and I know that you recognize that. So I just wanted to recognize your efforts there. Commissioner Bonilla, your interview was outstanding, and I know that you really care about Hayward, and I do commend you for knowing what's happening in the community and bringing it to the dais tonight in your interview. I really appreciate that. Mr. Ali Sullivan, I know there are great things ahead of you. You are when I met with you on Planning Commission, it was a brief time, but I can tell that you are really passionate and looking for innovation and bringing that to the Planning Commission, and I really appreciate your energy whenever I speak to you. So I know this sounds like attribute speech, but I just wanted to give them some kudos, because there is a lot of work to being on boards and commissions, and I just want to acknowledge their efforts. It's not something that they just get selected on and then they tick a box. They actually meet with the community. They meet with community members. They spend a lot of time out of their evenings away from their family, balancing their jobs in order to be on these commissions. So I just want to acknowledge their efforts. And I am interested in looking at how we can make this process more equitable. And I really appreciated Mr. Ramos coming here tonight and saying what he said, because I do think we need to review and make sure that that people who show their activism in different ways have an opportunity to present themselves, and I will be interested in hearing some changes and reform to that if that time comes again. I'm still torn. between two. And I have to say it is between Mr. Goldstein and Mr. Bonilla, based off of just their commitment to Hayward, but also their knowledge of urban planning. And a lot of the decisions that we make are related to urban planning. And a lot of decisions that we make are decades-long contributions to our city. So I do recognize that everyone can bring a different flavor to the council. Definitely understand that. But I feel like some of the answers that I heard tonight were really good answers to some of the issues that come to the dais. So I'm still torn. So I don't know if there's another round, but those are the two nominations that I have.
Okay, I'll come back to you. And council members, their menu.
First of all, thank you all who are here. Thank you, Mr. Ramos, for your input on this. All the callers and all the folks who spoke, that's tremendous. The five of you are a very great group. I think the answers were good. And any one of you really up here would be tremendous because each one of you brings something different, and there's always a learning curve. When I got on here, I didn't really know everything, but I became fluent on what Hayward is, and that's something that we all need to strive for. A few years ago, I was in the same situation I was an applicant, and there were 5 people also applied, and I did not get selected. There was disappointment. The wife gave me a hug when I got home, but it was okay. The following day, I said, that's all right. I'm going to keep at it, and I'm going to keep knowing Hayward more, knowing more people. So that's something important. I know that the 4 who I will not nominate will feel disappointed, but I emphasize with you and I sympathize with you because I went through the same thing. And I know that tomorrow you will wake up and say, oh, time to move on and time to make Hayward better and help it move forward. And that's something that I think every one of you has that possibility. Like colleague Andrews, I am also conflicted between two of our applicants. Mr. Bonilla and I met and had a very, very good talk, and I was not the liaison to the Youth Commission when he was the Youth Commissioner, but I know he did a very good job, so I always hear good things. And the fact that somebody is born in that particular city, has been educated in that city, that's something to be really relished. I'm not Hayward born. I'm an immigrant from Mexico, and I landed here in 1978. So this is not my hometown, but Hayward has been very good to me and my family, and that's why I give back to it every day. I really, in my mind, I need to do the right thing. And in my mind today, the right thing is to listen to over 7,000 people who voted for Dan Goldstein. In my mind, that to go against those 7,000 people, over 7,000 people, it just doesn't seem right to me. So my apologies to all 4 of you, but my nomination is Dan Goldstein. Thank you.
Thank you, and then Council Member Syra.
Thank you, Mayor. This feels like a little too close to my face. Okay. I first want to thank staff for helping us facilitate this process. I really want to thank everyone that applied and congratulate those that made it to the interview phase. Everybody poured their heart into this process, and it's very scary, and I commend you for your courage and your resolution, not just to yourself and the city, but to your communities that you represent. I really believe that Hayward is spoiled for choice tonight. Each candidate that presented tonight brings a unique wealth of experience, and I have no doubt that whoever is appointed will be an immense asset to our city, and I look forward to serving and learning with them. I want to assume that Whoever is going to be appointed tonight hopefully will campaign hard in 2024, and I want to encourage them to run that campaign corporate-free. I myself am new to this role, and so I can't speak with the same wisdom as many of my colleagues to my right. But what I can speak to is what helped put me here, and that's the ability to listen to, learn from, and galvanize people into action. For me, my nomination will be for Artavia because of how I've seen her exhibit these qualities. Her leadership in the Community Services Commission with regards to Russell City is attracting national attention, and I think it's really setting a precedent for how cities can approach healing and restitution. Beyond those highlights and years of community service, which have been recognized by dozens of letters which were sent to council in support of her work. I also just want to say that I have immense respect for the work of our planning commissioners. I haven't had the privilege of getting to work alongside you all. And I just particularly want to thank Commissioner Goldstein for running a phenomenal campaign. I personally see this appointment process as a separate race with an entirely new batch of candidates, and that's what's informing my decision-making process and my decision to nominate Artavia. I do want to commend Commissioner Bonilla for an exceptional interview, and one of the reasons I'm not adding to the nomination pile is because you already have quite a bit of support. And I also want to thank Commissioner Bruckner for a very moving opening statement and for sharing your story with the Hayward community. Thank you.
Thank you. So if I have a motion, I can close.
I'll move to close nomination period.
So nomination period is closed. I don't need a second, correct? I just want to make sure.
You do need a second.
I do need a second. Okay,
Yes.
so can I get a second?
I'll second.
Moved by Councilmember Marquez, seconded by Councilmember Roach. And then now I'd like to proceed. We will go name by name.
And we'll do a vote on that.
Yeah, and we'll do a vote per person.
Actually, on the closing of the nomination period.
Oh.
Right? We'll go ahead. Councilmember
take roll call.
Andrews? Aye. Councilmember Marquez?
Aye.
Councilmember Roche?
Aye.
Councilmember Syrup?
Abstain.
Abstain. Councilmember Cermeño?
Abstain to close the nomination period? Okay, all right. Yes.
Okay, Mayor Salinas?
Yes. So we have 4 yeses and 1 abstention. Yes.
So you had 5 ayes and
yes,
1 abstention.
5 ayes, 1 abstention by Councilmember Syrup.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, so now we will proceed to vote per candidate, and then we'll do a affirmative or abstention per candidate.
Correct, and you'll want to start with 1 applicant at a time.
Perfect. So I'd like to first have, if we can vote on Councilmember Syrup's nomination of Artavia Berry.
Okay. And
Would I have to initiate a formal motion for that?
No,
No, we don't need. Go ahead and vote.
Yeah, so we just go ahead and vote. Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah.
Councilmember Andrews?
Nay.
Abstention
Oh,
or
abstain.
yeah, okay.
Abstain? Councilmember Marquez?
No.
Councilmember Roche?
Abstain.
Councilmember Syrup?
Yes.
Councilmember Cermeño? Councilmember Cermeño?
I heard Salinas.
No.
No.
No. All right, and Mayor Salinas?
No, abstain.
Abstain.
Okay. I'd like to now, so we had
You had 3.
3 abstentions, 1 no. Well, we're counting those.
So
the same, correct?
that failed for
Yes,
lack
so,
of
yeah.
4 votes in favor.
Yeah, lack of 4 votes, it fails. Okay. Next, I'd like to call a vote for Ray Bonilla.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Andrews?
Abstain.
Abstain. Councilmember Marquez?
No.
No. Councilmember Roche?
Yes.
Councilmember Syrup?
Yes.
Councilmember Cermeño?
Abstain.
Abstain. Mayor Salinas?
Abstain.
Abstain. Okay. Okay, that didn't get 4 votes.
Yeah, so it fails. Okay. Okay, so now I'd like to call a vote for Mr. Dan Goldstein.
Okay. Councilmember Andrews?
Yes.
Yes. Councilmember Marquez?
Aye.
Councilmember Roche?
Aye.
Councilmember Syrup?
Abstain.
Abstain. Councilmember Cermeño?
Sí.
Mayor Salinas?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. That was,
And I believe we have the 4 votes.
that's 5. Yes,
That's 5.
5
Okay. Congratulations, Mr. Goldstein. So now what I'd like to do is we close this item, correct? And then we move on to the resolution appointing council member, the next council member for the Hayward City Council, or for the city of Hayward. And we have a report from Miriam Lenz, and I believe this is where we begin the swearing-in process.
thank you, Mayor. There's no report, but you could call for a motion to approve the resolution appointing a council member to the city of Hayward, and this is for a two-year term.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Cermeño, seconded by Councilmember Marquez. Madam City Clerk, if you can take the roll.
Yes, thank you. Councilmember Andrews?
Aye.
Councilmember Marquez?
Aye.
Councilmember Roche?
Aye.
Councilmember Syrup?
Yes.
Councilmember Cermeño?
Sí.
Mayor Salinas?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That's approval of the resolution. Thank you very much.
Okay, so now I believe we start the next process, which is the swearing in. So can I have Commissioner Goldstein please come up and stand by the podium, and we'll administer the swearing in. Yeah, yeah. And if you're wondering out there, when we scoot over, all the rattling, it's not Mayor Pro Tem Andrews and Councilmember Marquez mad at me and pushing this on me. There's feet on these, and the feet are underneath our chairs. So every time we move our chair, it rattles. So just, okay. I'd like to welcome Councilmember Goldstein to the dais. And now, congratulations. Now I'd like to close item number 2 under legislative business, move on to council reports and announcements. Are there any council reports and announcements? And I'm going to take chair's prerogative and defer to the new council member, Dan Goldstein, to see if he has any comments or announcements.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I almost called you Madam Mayor, and it's nothing to do with, I'm just so used to Barbara Halliday having that position. So I am overwhelmed with joy. I'm containing it because this is, we're a serious legislative body here. But for all of you that came to support me today, for all of you that are online, assuming some of you are still online, thank you. Your support, your encouragement, your wisdom, your knowledge, and insights are wind beneath my wings. So I just want to say thank you. And also thank you to those of you that are here. It was a tough decision and a rigorous process for you. I know because I've been following along. And for those of you that competed for this position, first of all, thank you for that competition. Frankly, it was a little scary because you guys are all good and any one of you could easily have been picked for this position. And so I mean it when I say this is a heartfelt thing. Stay in touch. We need you. We need to work together if we want to continue to see Hayward make progress. So please do that. And I don't know what else to say. I'm in a little bit of overwhelm right now, but thank you all so much for your support. And I am so happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or council reports or announcements from other council members?
Mayor Salinas, I'm sorry, I'm online. Can I just want to jump in?
Yes.
I want to apologize, but we online could not hear the swearing in at all. And I just think for new council member Goldstein's benefit to have that recorded on the record for his posterity. We didn't hear it at all because there was no mic when he did that. So I don't know if you'd like to redo that in front of the microphone, but I just wanted to make that known to the council.
Do we have a handheld microphone?
We don't at the moment, but we could go to the podium if you like.
Yeah, let's go to the podium where there's a
Goldstein.
microphone and absolutely.
Would you like to?
Yeah,
Okay.
Let's do it again. Yeah, thank you, Madam City Manager.
Thank you. I just thought he would like to have that on the record.
I actually have to say one more thing or I'm never going to hear the end of it. Where's the camera for online? It's up there? They can see me up there? Over there? So they're all around me. All right, here's the point.
Look up here, yeah.
I have to thank my daughter, who's been unusually supportive throughout this whole campaign process. None of us does this alone, right? It's our families behind us that really make this possible. And my daughter has been especially outstanding with that. So Izzy, if you're watching online, thank you for all of your support. And my son, Matthew, who took the time to call in and, he calls me his best friend. And I wipe tears from my eyes when I hear that, that's an unusual relationship to have with your offspring. And I just feel so incredibly honored by that. So thank you, Matthew.
All right.
So we'll make sure this is on record. So we'll have to move the mic around. All right, Mr. Goldstein, would you please raise your right hand, and would you please state your full name? I,
Daniel Goldstein,
and would you please repeat after me? Do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California.
That I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
That I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
And that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I'm about to enter as a member of the City Council.
And that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter as a member of the Hayward City Council.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay. So now, are there, Madam City Manager, anything else?
No, that was it.
Okay.
Thank you for indulging me. I just thought
Absolutely.
Councilmember Goldstein would like to have that for posterity for himself.
Yeah, thank you for catching that. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. And if there are no reports or announcements, I do have one brief announcement for all the council members. We have a photographer out in the back, so please don't run out of here. We do have, we're going to take a group photograph. So I'd like to close council reports and announcements. There are no council referrals. And I would like to, before I adjourn the meeting, I just wanted to say thank you thank you everybody for coming out this afternoon or this evening now. And again, congratulations to Councilmember Goldstein. Thank you to my colleagues for going through this. It gets easier, trust me. Or I should say, it gets even more difficult, I don't know. Anyways, meeting adjourned, thank you.
Record.